All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Thanks for
Ho.
joining.
Hey ho.
Oh, looks like we
Let's
have a fun
go.
crew here live. I'm seeing a bunch of people chatting, talking about how everyone's. I asked how people are doing on their matchups. I think every single person is saying how they're getting crushed. So that's
Oh,
not good.
sounds like you're winning.
Me?
Yeah. I
I'm
feel
up
like
by
I've got
2 points right now.
Oh, okay. I
I
feel
was
like I've
actually up
got
by
like a
like 50. And then just the last couple of days, just all my guys have just taken a nap, and my opponent has just exploded. Just
Oh.
but
Oh.
we'll see
Bad
how it ends
time for
up.
a nap. That's rough. I'm sorry to hear that.
What are you gonna do? But I'm just joining the crowd. Connie's having a rough week. Schwab squad. Ethan is not doing well in his money league. He's doing well with his dynasty league. That's good. But
I mean, so long as you're I think the goal is to play in enough leagues that there's one that you do well in at least one and you don't fail in all of them. Right? Like there's a
okay.
sweet spot somewhere in there.
Or you just have your life overtaken with fantasy hockey and you lose all your friends and
That
family.
Yeah, and your leagues. Like it's worth it is so long as you win. Is
I
it though?
suppose. I guess if you're playing with your friends and they respect you more and like you more.
Yeah.
I always thought like the prize for a fantasy league should be that everyone like takes you out for dinner and toasts you all night. It talks about how great you are and like
Yeah.
genuinely means it.
You have said that.
But I've never had it happen. But now I don't even play fantasy with
It's
friends.
because you win because you win in ways that make people angry.
I can't help it. I'm sorry. But anyway, we got a good episode here, so I guess we can start it off and see how it goes.
My computer's grinding here. We're gonna be fine
Okay.
though. I'm gonna try and close some windows over the course of
Yeah,
of
definitely
the.
Chrome. The more windows you have open, the more it grinds.
So this is
You
my
should
only Chrome window.
Okay, so what is it? What are you
I use
closing?
Firefox otherwise.
Okay, whatever. Close just to turn off Firefox, maybe.
Turn
Well, I don't know,
off.
you know what to do.
I have so many things open.
Like for the podcast or just other things?
No, like my life is open on here.
Just save them. I think there's a way to just save it as a session or whatever and come back later. This is why your computer's grinding.
I like to have it.
Okay, well, hopefully it doesn't affect the show.
If it affects
All right.
the show, then I'm sorry.
One day your computer is going to have to restart. Like,
I'll restart it. I should have restarted it before the show.
You have to have bookmarks
that's my
of the
mistake.
windows you care about.
So I do. I would restore the session, but I want to keep the session open. I use it to research live.
Oh, I thought you said it wasn't the podcast. I thought you said it was life stuff.
Uh,
Inconsistencies.
it's both.
But anyway,
It's both.
it's all intertwined. You've
Apparently,
got a
my
tab
daughter
of, like,
I just got a text saying my daughter just angrily asked, "When will he stop doing podcasts?"
Well, this is supposed to be the family business, and one day you pass it on to her. But with an attitude like that, maybe not.
It would bring me so much joy for
Me
our children
too.
to like legitimately make this the family business. I
All
can't.
right,
even
Schwab Swat has
imagine.
an example for you, Brian.
Of what?
Just close Firefox and then hit Control-Shift-T when you open it again.
Oh yeah, I know how. I just don't want to.
Okay, fine.
There's,
All right.
there's a difference.
Yeah.
I'm also
Honestly,
like I have
next
a
time you
lot
don't
of.
even have to tell me when your computer is grinding. You just stress me out for no reason. Like, what am I supposed to do with this information?
I'm sorry. Just ignore it. Okay.
Otherwise, me and the patrons are going to try to give you some advice on how to fix the problem. Then you're going to say, I don't want to do that. And then it's just like, well, why are we having this conversation?
Everything's gonna be all right.
All right.
Everything's gonna be okay.
All right. Well, now that you mentioned your daughter, let me just check quickly to see if mine is asleep, just so that I could feel good before we start or feel
The other
terrible.
future co-owner of Breline Entertainment.
Yeah, she hasn't
Limited.
complained. Oh, she is standing. Oh, my
What?
God.
Who does she
Oh
think
my
she
God.
is?
What the hell? Whatever. I'm going to start the show and just hope that Dina deals with it. But I don't know about that. All right. Here we go.
Are you sure?
This might be another one of those ones where
Are you sure though? Do you think maybe if you put in the minute now,
it'll save time later.
it'll save some minutes later? I don't want it to get to the point where like Dina's going in, it's getting worse, and she can't leave.
All right, I guess I can go in then if you wanna. If you
I'll
wanna
entertain the
entertain.
masses,
She's just
or
staring. She's
they'll
not even
entertain
crying.
me. Buy a new computer and ignore him. Okay. I almost did about a month ago. I decided one more year. That's me being disciplined.
Okay, be right back.
One
Why
problem
be
for anyone.
disciplined? Life's too short. If it's something you use every day, my policy is that's worth spending on. I
I
think.
like this computer's not as old as I usually use my computers.
Yeah, but if it sucks, right? Like,
But it doesn't
sunk
suck. It just
cost.
sucks when I don't
Yeah,
refresh it.
I see. Okay, I'll be back. See ya.
Uh, one of the problem. You can go. I'm talking to people now. Feel free to, guide the conversation. Anyone who wants to guide the conversation. I have part of the challenge. Part of the reason I don't want to close all my tabs is because like I have some private windows going and those don't reopen. I'm trying to purchase a car. It sucks. It's not fun. It's very annoying. So we have like I don't even want to buy a car, but I've been driving a car that my mechanic says, quote, it drives. My mechanic also told me it's a 2006 Pontiac Pursuit. It's beautiful, except the rockers have completely rusted out, as so has the undercarriage, I think. My mechanic told me he never wants to see it again. That was a year ago. He said, drive it until it falls apart. But then he gave me hope a couple weeks back when I was there with my proper car, which we bought to replace this old rust bucket because we thought the rust bucket was going to die. And then we turned into a family that needed 2 cars. Anyway, and he's like, "Oh, well, you're still driving it? What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, we'll bring it back. We'll top up the fluids or whatever." It's like, whoa, like don't do that for me, man. Like I've got to ditch this car. Every time I drive, like if I take a turn hard enough, it says brake fluid low. But then if the car is level and flat, it doesn't say brake fluid low. So I'm pretty sure the brake fluid is just fine, everybody. I haven't changed the oil for at least a year. This car has taken a beating. It's amazing. Anyway. Yeah, looking at a new car. I don't like any of the new cars. More patrons. Yeah, more patrons expanded. You know what the worst part is though is that Ethan, if we had more patrons, I had more money to buy on a car, I wouldn't spend it. I don't know what I'd do with it, but I'd still be like annoyed at how much a new car costs that already has 150,000 kilometers on it. That would help. Oh, Connie, I'm curious, Connie, if you feel like sharing what you upgraded to. This is just the second car. All right, this just needs to get me to and from my job, which presently is a very short drive. Sometimes I need to drive like around the city a little bit to visit different places. But like this car's gonna drive like less than 5,000 kilometers a year. I don't know what that is in miles for the Americans. Chris, I'm with you. Okay, Connie, I was looking at the Ioniq. So we have our like family car, and that's like the family car. It's like it's a combustion engine. We bought it in 2020. Do I wish it was electric or a hybrid or something? Yeah, I do. But the second car, we drive so little, it doesn't even matter like if it's a EV or not, really. And they're a little more expensive, and I don't think like I really feel the benefits because the mileage is going to be so low. So so here's where I'm at. I'm going to, before I buy a car, I'm definitely going to compare like another internal combustion. I'm gonna look at the EV options and make sure there's not one that isn't like priced very similarly. Patty, yeah, you're on your second Prius. There's a Prius C. It's like a smaller Prius. I don't even think it exists anymore, but that's a car that I might get. Oh, Chris, you did the deposit. Yeah, it's I have a friend who's waiting for that same thing too. I on vacation twice. We rented a car in Florida, a Tesla once, and a Kia, like the bigger EV. I think it's not a Niro, or it's bigger than an EV6 or something. They were so much fun to drive. I would much rather get a battery car, electric car, whatever. But it's out of the budget at the moment. And so my plan, because we were looking at cars, but like there's this weird moment in the range of years we're looking at where they don't have the safety features or Apple CarPlay, which is like a dumb thing to like really want, but like if I spend enough time in the car, I would like to be able to easily make calls and listen to music and not connect to Bluetooth. And none of them have the features I want from like 2014 to 2020. And before that's a little too old. And after that, it's too expensive. So now I'm like, okay, maybe I will get something pre 2014 and I'll make it like a 5-year car instead of a 10-year car. And then I will be able to buy one of these newer cars that has all the safety and connectivity features that I want. And maybe it will be electric. That's my car story. Elon gets to live a zero car life.
Yeah, I didn't listen to the story, but zero car life is pretty good. Got to be honest.
Yeah,
but
I'm complaining about having to live a 2-car life.
2 cars, yikes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you get the flexibility. You get to go places, so that's fun.
Do I?
I guess. I don't know. Otherwise, why do it?
I mean, I get to go to work.
Yeah, you couldn't go to work by bus?
No.
No,
the bus, unfortunately, is not reliable enough for a teacher to get where they need to get. And actually, the job that I'm presently in, it said in the description, like, you actually need a car to do this job because it requires a lot of, like, visiting places. Schools and stuff.
All right, well, sounds like it's a necessary thing, and I'm sure it's great. I'm happy for you.
Are you? How sure are you?
I don't know. I'm not. Making chit-chat.
Okay.
Let's try to start the podcast. I don't know how things are going over here, but I think we should start. And Dina's going to message me if, I don't know if necessary, but maybe not. So, Matthew's starting a new job. Congrats.
Wow. That's exciting.
Fully remote. My company was fully remote, and they switched to 2 times a week.
Would you, Elon, change to a fully remote? You're on video. I guess it's not a great thing.
What's the question?
Would you leave your job for a fully remote situation?
Yeah, probably not. It doesn't bother me that much.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me is because also I bike to work and it's a good exercise and it's probably like helping me to be a healthier person because like I was definitely like had this idea in my head like I'm gonna go to the office sometimes and bike and then never did because I'm lazy. But yeah, the thing that bothers me is when I go to the office for a mandatory day and then I'm there and like hardly anyone else is there because, you know, people get to choose their day. And then I have a bunch of meetings and then I'm having these like meetings where I'm having them over Zoom because no one else is there. And I can't sit at my desk to do the meeting because I don't want to, because I have to talk and I don't want to disturb people around me. So we have these little like phone booths that you could go in to do these calls. And I had a day a couple of weeks ago or last week where I had to do like, it was like 2.5 hours a day were these meetings where I was sitting in this phone booth where I was like, why can't I be sitting on my comfortable desk at home doing this rather than sitting in this phone booth on a bad chair? Kind of bothered me.
What are you doing?
It's like, this is silly. Who is this helping?
The local businesses.
Well, I only go to Pizzaiolo. That's my protest to the forced mandatory work.
I mean, we talk. There's a lot of talk in Ottawa, right? Like a lot of civil servants who work for the federal government who like have to go back, and like a lot of because downtown businesses are suffering. But it's like all their like neighborhood businesses are going to suffer now.
Mm-hmm. And also, if like the business is suffering, maybe it's not a good business and close it. Maybe a better business will open.
And the great irony is that these downtown businesses, their hours are like Monday to Friday from 11 to 2. Like that's it. They're open for lunch, and the rest of the time they are just wasting space.
It's definitely not like taxpayers' jobs to like support local businesses. Like but anyways, that's a whole separate we should do a politics podcast, Brian.
That is
And
that is definitely the logical conclusion from this conversation.
But like I work in this place called The Well, and it has like so many expensive restaurants in it. It's like this like whole fancy new thing that opened up. It's like $20 for a whatever, for like a fish sandwich. And it's like, get out of here. Like I like Pizzaiolo. That's a business I would actually be sad if it closed. So I'm just gonna walk to Pizzaiolo every day for lunch when I'm at work.
Do you go every day?
No, I only have to go twice a week.
Oh, do you go
and
twice a week?
Sometimes I get like free lunch. Like sometimes I get free lunch at work.
Oh, nice.
So, but on the days where I'm not getting lunch provided, then I definitely am going to Pizzaiolo.
Nice.
That's the only business I support.
Hell yeah.
It's the only restaurant.
We love Pizzaiolo here.
I also like some places like near me I would support. But like, why should I support some downtown business? I got to give my money to the restaurants near me. So they stay open. All right.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Fantasy hockey. Oh, there's games on right now, and my matchup is on the line, so I definitely need to open that up. 1-0 Colorado. Ross Colton.
That guy.
Frickin' Ross Colton. Jeez,
He doesn't
we'll talk about him
stop.
soon. All right, well, we'll talk about him soon. Let's do this.
All right. Like 97 minutes. Connor McDavid minutes.
Let's see. Okay. Like this message, tell me when you need to stop. You know, like I don't know.
I'm setting a goal.
Okay.
It's a goal.
All right.
Goal.
Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who would be pretty embarrassed if we added a bunch of new talent to our podcast feed, only to end up putting an egg up every single show, a la the Nashville Predators. But we don't do that. We only have talent here, and we deliver. I'm your host, Elon Dubrowski, and with me, as always, to break down all of the fantasy implications of the past week of NHL action, it is the Fantasy Hockey Robot, the Poobah Prognostication, the IPP MVP himself, Brian Combe. Brian, how's it going?
Oh, so good, Elon. I loved this week of midweek short shifts content. Shout out to Lewis and Elizabeth for like a cracking debut. That's like supposed to go with the egg thing you said. I'm not sure if it really flowed though. And then Shams and Jeremy bringing it home on Thursday. So, and you again, Elon, for Matchup Matt. There's so much. So thank you all for listening and subscribing to our feed. And boy, yeah, I think we're gonna knock it out of the park tonight.
That's the plan. I mean, look, all those other shows were great. This is gonna be the best one. Okay, so strap in. I mean, that's the plan here. I hope so. Otherwise, what did I spend like hours preparing?
It's embarrassing now if it's not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see how we do. The plan for today. I have a few things I got planned for us. Okay. First of all, I've looked at the top 20 players currently in fantasy points per game, skaters, I guess, in the cupful scoring. But obviously, this will be transferable to other leagues. We're just going to go through the top 20 and talk about some of these players and some other players on their team who I find interesting. Then I've got some other hot streaks I'm intrigued by, and then we're going to end with some cold streaks, some players where we have to ask those tough questions of whether we're like letting go of these guys, or sometimes it's someone that's so high end that you're not going to drop him. Like you're not going to drop Miro Heiskanen, right? But it's like, sometimes with these guys on like bad cold streaks, it's like if you don't trade them now, like if you wait even a week and they stay just as bad, like their stock plummets, right? Like now is still a sweet spot. We're only 2 weeks in where some people may be willing to just pay similar to, the draft table stock. So these are the types of conversations we're going to be having today. And I guess same for the hot streaks, right? I guess the big question with some of these hot streaks are like, if they're in free agency, then the question is, should I add them, right? And get them on my team ASAP. And if they're not in free agency, if they're already on my team, the question is like, am I holding this guy and just enjoying it? Or am I like, really pounding the pavement, trying to trade them at a inflated value? That's going to be some of these discussions, Brian. I'm really stoked to get into it. Of course, we are presented by DobberHockey.com. They're having these conversations all the time over there, and it's a pretty great website. Just like I predicted that this is going to be a pretty great podcast. So, Brian, how do you feel about all that?
I am yes, I feel so good. Could we get started to the best podcast of the week?
Let's do it. I mean, let's start with the best player of the past 2 weeks. The leading Cupful fantasy points per game scorer has been. Do people know? Is this an obvious thing that I'm saying? Or maybe this will be interesting news to some people. Nikita Kucherov. This guy won the Art Ross last year. wasn't like the consensus like number one, number two, number three pick in fantasy. Like I think all of us were like, it's got to be Matthews, McKinnon, McDavid, and then you talk about and not in that order, and then then we talk about the next group. But Kucherov has not only done just as well as last year, he's like doing even better because now all of a sudden he's scoring so many goals. He has a goal in every single game he's played so far, including 2 in one of them. We're up to 7 goals and 2 assists in 5 games. Also 23 shots on goal. This isn't some crazy like he's taking 2 shots a game and scoring on them, Like he's shooting a ton. It's incredible. Like I thought Jake Gensel coming in would be a situation where, yeah, that's great. Gensel's the goal scorer. Kucherov's the awesome playmaker. It's just going to be Gensel scoring a ton of goals assisted by Kucherov. But it's like they've like flipped. Like Gensel has a goal and 4 assists, and it's Kucherov with 7 goals and 2 assists. Is this like maybe something we should just? I know it's so hard to predict. Like, are you seeing this as like, okay, well, I guess that's what the season is going to be, or do you think it will flip at some point and like Kucherov is going to have more goals, or sorry, Kucherov is going to have fewer goals, more assists, and like Gensel maybe get some more of these goals?
Yeah, it's a really funny thing that Kucherov and Gensel have like traded places here, changed their roles. Gensel, usually, we're used to seeing him get 3 or 3.5 shots per game. This year, just 8 shots in 4 games. Needless to say, like I can tell you the fancy ways, right? His 5-on-5 shot rates are like almost half of what they were last year, which is bad news. Gensel's shot attempts per 60 minutes have been more than cut in half compared to like last season and the years before. And this actually all means that Jake Gensel's expected goals, his own expected goals, someone who we want to score 40 goals, is basically nowhere. Like it's like 4th line. Like Jake Gensel is lucky to have a goal essentially at this point, but hey, 5 points in 4 games, so I'm not mad about it. He's shooting his usual 12%. So I just wanted to see Jake Gensel take more shots, and those shots are going to need to come at 5-on-5. He's still shooting on the power play. He's not attempting quite as many as he usually does, but like it's not concerning. And overall, I'm really trying not to sound the alarm here on Jake Gensel either. I'm not concerned. Like Kucherov, meanwhile, like you said, he's shooting more than ever. He's seen a 25% increase in shot attempts. It's funny that they didn't just like come in, meet each other and be like, okay, I'll do what I do and you do what you do and it'll be perfect. I don't know if this was planned or it's just the way things are working out. I mean, maybe Kucherov is like, well, I'm scoring on 30% of my shots, so I'm going to just keep shooting as long as that happens, and then we'll go do the thing we're supposed to do. So I think there's still a chance that maybe this partnership does work out the way we would have imagined. But for now, it's great for Kucherov, and it's fine for Gensel. Like, it's not like red alert levels here. Sure, I'd love to see more out of a guy that I was drafting in the second round of some of my drafts. But I am like happy the points are coming in the meantime, and if he just becomes an assist guy, I can work with that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
it's not ideal.
Like if Gensel ends up right now, he's at 5.88 fantasy points per game, which is good. I don't know if that's worth like what he was drafted for, but you can't complain with over a point per game, like you said. Kucherov, we'll see. It's pretty incredible. I wonder if he is like becomes the favorite now for the the Maurice Richard, or if you still bet on like Matthews, who only has like 1 or 2 goals at this point. I guess obviously we'll need some more data. It's only been 4 games for Tampa, or no, 5 games. But they did have 1 game canceled, so it'll be fun to see some more Tampa games and see like what this new look lineup continues to do. Let's move on to the next player in the top 20 couple scoring. How about Artemi Panarin, who like last year Panarin had 120 points, and it seemed like a bit of an aberration. I was like, yeah, Panarin's great, but this like no way he repeats that. He's 33 years old. He just had his best season. Like my policy has always kind of been like if a player has just had his best ever season and he's like above 30 years old, like he's probably going to go down the next year. But like so far, it's also only been 5 games. Panarin has 12 points. He's on an 197 point pace. It's insane. I remember when we were getting our draft picks for the Cupful, and I was like, I just don't want like 13 or 14. I don't want to be stuck picking someone like a Panarin. In hindsight, I got Draisaitl at 6. Right now, I would have been a lot nicer to have Panarin at this point. Obviously, we'll see how things play out. Also, Trocheck is doing incredibly incredibly playing with him. Lafreniere, he's definitely breaking out, and we expected it, but Lafreniere 6 points in 5 games, and that's without the power play. He hasn't gone pointless yet. It's all like a big long point streak for Lafreniere. Chris Kreider doing amazing. Honestly, the only player on the Rangers that's like, if you look at the total numbers, it doesn't look so bad, but a little inconsistent has been Mika Zibanejad. He had 3 games, 3 of his 5 games. Zibanejad has done like nothing at all. And then he had one huge 1 goal, 2 assist game. And then yesterday versus Toronto, Zibanejad had 2 assists. So we get up to 5 points in 5 games, which is good. But I do think it's odd that he's having such quiet games. But do you think that's just like whatever? That's what happens in small sample sizes, or do you think like maybe now that now that Zibanejad has had a good game, maybe now's the time to try to see if you can get off this ship?
Zibanejad is shooting less and he's skating less. He's down 2 minutes a night at 5-on-5. But also, like, it's not all bad. His line looks sharp, but Zibanejad and his teammates on the ice are shooting less than 7%, which won't hold. And maybe that's one of the reasons why production's been spotty. Zibanejad's also still a big part of the power play. I think I'd hang in, but I know there are, like, I know Zibanejad has worn people's patience already over the last couple seasons with sort of, Elon, there was that disastrous, was that 2 years ago or 3 years ago where you had him? Do you remember? And it was like impossible to wait.
It was really frustrating.
Yeah. So like this isn't Zibanejad's first time disappointing fantasy managers at the start or during the season. So that's that's the piece that I would like say if you're looking for permission to move on, your permission is that he's done this to you before potentially. Otherwise, like it's a bit of a bummer that he's not seeing as much ice time, but sure, go ahead. Look around. If there's somebody who went like very near him in the round who's looking like their production is unchanged and you feel confident in them, then maybe that could be something you look into doing. Panarin, by the way, last year he brought, like you mentioned how amazing he is this year, he brought his shot rates to new heights last year, and we were like, can he keep it up this year? So far, I just wanted to update the answer is yes. He's also shooting 38%, which has helped him 6 goals on 16 shots, with 3 on the power play, which are higher percentage shots. And I guess, like you said, that you couldn't bring yourself to get him. And I just, I wonder, looking at the ADP, like what does he need to do to crack the group of guys? Like the guys taken before him, Nylander, both Kachucks, Jack Hughes, Kaprizov, Rantanen, Draisaitl, and then you're at Kucherov and Pasternak. So I don't think he's cracking them. But, I mean, Panarin's 33 years old. He's been over 105 points in 4 of his last 5 seasons, all of them since becoming a Ranger. He's had 113 points or more in 3 of his last 5 seasons. And it's interesting to think why he hasn't been able to break through our consciousness yet. I don't know if it's age or I don't know, because that puts him sort of in the same level as Kucherov, Pasternak, Draisaitl, being this consistent 105, 110 plus point player. And he still falls to the second round in Cupful on average, 17th overall this year.
Well, yeah, like I said, he had that one insane season of 120. If he does it again, I'll bet you he'll go really high next year. Then that's probably the way he'll fall off. But yeah, the thing also, though, Shams is saying in the chat that if you look at 2 of those games have been against Detroit, and that's where Panarin has loaded up on 7 of his 12 points. So I guess maybe seeing more non-Detroit games might seem closer to point per game. I guess we'll have to wait and see on him. Another guy on the Rangers I'll just bring up. I don't know what there is to really say, except for that Igor Shesterkin in this contract negotiation is definitely doing his part to be like, no, I still want all the money. He's been incredible in his 4 games. He stopped almost every shot. He stopped 34 of 35 versus the Leafs yesterday. Shesterkin looking like the early Vezina candidate this year and negotiating a new contract. I think it's a fun time to be Shesterkin's agent. I'll just say that.
Yeah, and the question was when he turned down that offer, it's how much more could he possibly get? And I wanted him to play well so we could find out the answer. So it'll be whatever he gets will be the absolute maximum possible.
So, okay, next up, Brian, and this is a pretty wild one. The first two have been kind of chalk. Like, no one's surprised to hear Kucherov and Panarin in this section of the podcast talking about the top 20 couple points per game guys. How about Tom Wilson? And again, like, Washington's only played 4 times, so it is a bit of a small sample size here. But in those 4 games, Tom Wilson has scored in each of them, including 2 goals and 1 assist in the 6-5 win over New Jersey yesterday. And of course, since he's Tom Wilson, he also threw 5 hits. He's not even playing with Ovechkin at even strength. I feel like at one point years ago, when Wilson started to come on, we were like, yeah, he's good if he's playing with Ovi. He's not even playing with Ovi. He's playing with just he's on the top power play, which is obviously very helpful. It's only 1 power play point. At even strength, it's been Tom Wilson with Dubois and Connor McMichael. Ovechkin's been playing with Dylan Strome and Alexei Protas. So, yeah, Tom Wilson, 30 years old. Obviously, he won't be this good, but, should we be prepared for him to be having a career year at this point? Or do you think it's just no, just whatever I'm seeing so far? No, he's 50 to 55 point Tom Wilson, and that's that. Or are you open to the possibility that no, we maybe are seeing 70 point 40 goal Tom Wilson?
Well, okay. I don't think it's going to be 70.40 goal Tom Wilson, but I don't know if it's surprising. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. And I'm kicking myself a little bit. There were several drafts I was in. I think Tom Wilson was high up on Dom's sheet and low in Yahoo, and he was just always sitting there. And I had to talk myself out of drafting him in every league I was in, usually going for someone who's upside or more was new and exciting, but is also long gone from my roster. And also Washington had a terrible schedule to start, which worked against me drafting Tom Wilson. But I love to see Wilson taking 12 shots in 4 games. He's got 5 goals on those shots, so he's converting on 42% of them. One of them came on the power play. But as you said, Elon, he's on the top power play unit, Tom Wilson. That's great. And if he can keep up 3 shots per game, he's been a 15% shooter throughout most of his career. That comes out to 36 goals, which is far above his career high of 24 goals. Add in some power play assists, and yeah, I think Tom Wilson could be 65 points, and 70 was not a crazy thing for you to say, so long as the shots keep up. And I wonder, Elon, we've talked about buy high, and I wonder if Tom Wilson, I can barely get the words out, but I wonder that whether he could be a buy high, especially with that terrible early schedule out of the way, that even if you were thinking of drafting him, that was the reason, or one of the reasons not to.
Interesting. So yeah, maybe if you have a guy who is struggling and someone would think this is my perfect opportunity to sell high on Tom Wilson, you can be yeah, okay, you do sell high on him and I'll take him. And I guess we'll have to see who we could compare him to as we go through. You're okay, let me throw a crazy one at you, Brian. Steven Stamkos has only 1 point in 5 games. Is that insane to
yeah, I don't think you're gonna do it for anyone, because I think whoever has Tom Wilson might be enjoying him, but also I don't know, unless they're listening, might not believe in, and I'm not even sure I believe in him, right? It's going to mean he's got to stay on the top power play and keep taking 3 shots per game. Both of those things are non-negotiable necessities for him to have the season we want him to have. No, I wouldn't do Stamkos. It would be a lower, it would, I don't know. You're right. It's always a good question, the who.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do
high
Stamkos,
sounds fun.
though. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see if we come up with someone as we go. But yeah, I'll mention also Dylan Strome having a great start to the year. Ovi has 4 points in 4 games. So yeah, for the people who took the chance on those Washington guys, even with the bad first week schedule, obviously happy so far. Okay, next up, no surprises here with a couple of Avalanche. Rantanen is up there, 9.3, a couple points per game. McKinnon, 8.9. A little bit further down, still in the top 20. Makar at 7.6. Yeah, I'm starting to wonder if I should have just taken Makar with my 6th overall pick instead of Draisaitl. We'll get to the Oilers. I already said last week how I regretted not taking Kaprizov. Now I'm throwing Makar in there. We'll see how many more players I end up regretting not having taken. But Brian, how about Ross Colton and Casey Middlestad, who have been crushing it themselves lately, with all these injuries in Colorado? it's led to Ross Colton, Casey Middlestat getting prime spots, both on the top power play, both in the top six, and they're delivering. Like I'm looking at the lines today for what it's worth. They're playing right now against the Sharks. Ross Colton is playing on the top line with McKinnon and Rantanen, and on the top power play, Middlestat playing with Logan O'Connor and Nikolai Kovalenko. That's the depth of the Avalanche right now. But hey, I mean, Colton has 4 goals and 1 assist in 5 games. Middlestat same, 4 goals and 1 assist in 5 games, both similar shots on goal, which are pretty good, like 18 and 17 shots. So we're talking over 3 shots per game. The thing is, like, eventually Colorado will get healthy, but also it's like not anytime too soon, right? Like Nichushkin will be back at some point. We'll see about Lehkonen and Drouin. I guess we don't know. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to predict like what's going to happen health-wise. Are you expecting like a Ross Colton or a Casey Middlestat to be for real? And I guess the other question is, does it matter? Like maybe you just like hold on as long as possible, hope for the best, and then if you stream them in, eventually you can like stream them out. But like Colorado had this great schedule this week. I'm pretty sure I said on Matchup Maximizer last week to like grab Colton and or Middlestat if you can get them. I assume at this point we're definitely not dropping, right? Like moving on to the next streamer. These guys are holds for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, like remember when Arturi Lehkonen became a hold? I feel like this is a similar situation where these guys are playing in roles where they haven't had a chance to play in these roles before. And that's why we're going to hold and wait, especially while Lehkonen and Drouin and Landeskog and Nichushkin are all out of the lineup. There's nowhere else for Colton and Middlestat to go. And they're both clearly in new situations. They're both playing about another minute and a half per night at 5-on-5. They're both seeing power play 1 deployment. Neither one of them has like seen this, like been dug in this territory for a long time, although Middlestat's a little more familiar to it. Colton has always been a decent rate shooter, so he's kept those rates up with the more time he's gotten. So more time, more shots. He's taken advantage of that opportunity. Of his 4 goals, only one of them has come at 5-on-5. So I wonder if he can do a little more there. Although 22% shooting for Ross Colton, that's twice as usual. But 3.5 shots per game is also twice as usual. Take him back down to 10%, and Colton could get 25 goals if he stays where he is in terms of deployment. But that's not a guarantee. So, if you were thinking of going out and trading for Tom Wilson, don't go out and trade for Ross Colton just because we don't know what's going to happen when the lineup returns to health, although it might still be a ways away. So, make the choice for you. Middlestat, similarly, he's actually increased his shot rates. He's getting to play a role where he's taking a few more shots, and he's taking 3.5 shots per night, which is fantastic. And he's sort of like a Ross Colton, but with some more pedigree, right? Casey Middlestat's always supposed to have had this extra gear, these skills that we just haven't been able to see, and he's getting a legit chance to show them off. So Ross Colton, Casey Middlestat, if you've got them, great. If they're available, you might want to go get them. I wouldn't cut bait just because the good Colorado week is over.
Yeah, Ross Colton just scored again, Brian. It's 2-0 right now, Colorado against San Jose. We're almost on the first. Both goals for Colorado by Ross Colton. So if somehow he's still available in free agency, you're I think at this point we're saying like any league depth. How can you not be just going to get this guy? He's playing with McKinnon and Rantanen in all situations like that. That's all you need. Okay. I'll mention also in Colorado. Well, first of all, I was going to say how Kaapo Kakkonen has arrived. So like apparently he had to go through some visa issues or whatever. So he's there. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, finally, Justus Annunen got a start today. His first start of the season. So we'll see. We're a period in. It's 2-0. Let's see how many saves. 4 saves. Come on, San Jose. Put a challenge out, but I guess we'll see how this goes. People are asking if we should pause the pod for Ross Colton. I think it's obvious. I feel like it's almost like, how is he even still available? Like, I feel like it's almost a waste of a pause the pod for a guy that, like, how is he still out there on Sunday of a 4 off-day game week, top line, top power play guy who was hot going into the week? But yeah, I mean, if he's available, yeah, I'm thinking it's a clear pause the pod, but not an official pause the pod, because that's like saying pause the pod for, I don't know, Tom Wilson. Makes no sense.
I don't know.
You tell me.
I think Ross Colton could still be out there, like has as much of a chance of being out there as some of the other guys that we're gonna PTP for, as I saw you write in your notes.
Yeah, 46% rostered on Yahoo. So yeah, I'd be curious to know who people are holding and not adding Ross Colton at this point, especially after these 2 goals. That number 46, that's definitely cracking 50 before people download this episode, I think. All right, let's go to the next guy on the list here, and that's Sam Reinhart. Another guy just like Panarin, who I guess I didn't believe enough in. Like, and I'm curious to know, Brian, if I need to change my policy again. I just figured Reinhardt's great. He's been great for a long time, but like, he just had a career year, close to 30 years old. Figured like, what was it, like 60 goal? How many goals did Reinhardt end up with? I know it was above 50.
It was a lot. He had 27 on the power play. Is that a good enough answer for now?
He ended up with 57 goals and 94 points last year. I figured that's unlikely to repeat, and he'd probably go back to like 50. Probably go back to like point per game, maybe a bit higher, like not the 100 and like not maybe a little higher. But yeah, not the 57 goals, like maybe more like 35, 40 goals. Anyway, so far, Sam Reinhart looking pretty incredible. He is up to, I don't even have the numbers. Oh yeah, pretty incredible. He's up to now 5 goals and 7 assists in the 7 games, 12 points. Obviously, it's a weird situation right now over in Florida. Barkov has been out for a long time now, and Matthew Tkachuk has also missed a few games, so the lines have been a little bit weird. But Reinhardt's been playing with Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen. Sam Bennett's been playing with Rodriguez and Carter Verhaeghe, and of course, Reinhardt's been like the big guy on the power play with Bennett, Verhaeghe, Lundell, and Adam Boqvist. So yeah, again, like I don't know really what we can say about Sam Reinhart. I guess you can do a deep dive if you want about like if he's going to keep this up, kind of like you did for Panarin. I guess the really interesting thing to me right now, what's going on in Florida, is Anton Lundell, right? Because this is a guy who maybe wasn't even drafted in a lot of leagues, was available in free agency, probably not anymore. He's a guy I need to ask a PTP question about, because Lundell has 4 goals and 3 assists in his last 4 games. Obviously enjoying being a top line, top power play guy for what is it, like the first time in his career. Like we knew Lundell was talented. He had a good playoffs last year, paced for like 57 points without that great deployment. But it's so hard to tell. Like, is this Lundell break? Because he's at that age. What is he, 22, 23? Like he might just be breaking out because he's at that age where someone with such a high pedigree might do so, or is it just that he's taking advantage of this deployment, and once it goes away he'll go back to being like a barely rosterable player? So I'm actually most curious to know, what is your current take on Anton Lundell and how likely he is to stay like someone that you want to keep on your roster for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is going to depend on the health of the team around him, right? And like the injury status of everyone, which Game Day Tweets is going to help you out, keep an eye on things. And by the way, 23 years old, he just turned 23 like 3 weeks ago. So you're 22, 23, you were bang on, Elon, with that age estimate for Anton Lundell. He is taking, like you said, there have been a couple times, especially last season, where we're like, oh, an injury. Anton Lundell is going to get to play an offensive role, and he didn't. And we were wondering why not, and if that meant anything long-term. So it's really nice to see Lundell get like an extended shot here, taking over 3 shots per night. He's picked up a power play point in each of the 2 games he's been on the top unit, shooting about twice. He's scoring on about twice as many of his shots as he usually does in terms of his shooting percentage. Look, I think you get him while he's there. I think there's enough. I think the returns in the Florida lineup will come sooner than Colorado if we're like looking at the Colton and Middlestat situation. I think players will get healthy sooner in Florida, and also like as they get healthier, the squeeze will come faster. Like there's just less space for Lundell. But in the meantime, absolutely pause the pod. Anton Lundell is worth rostering. And Sam Reinhart, I just want to say, like we talked about how he shot 25% last year, had a 34% power play shooting percentage. That's why he shot 25% last year. But Reinhart looked for real enough to think that he could continue a really great chunk of it and he was going to be worth an early pick. It was just a matter of how early Reinhart would be taken by anyone else who was like just sorting by last year's numbers and crazy projections that were based disproportionately upon them. Like Sam Reinhart was sort of like the new hotness at the draft table. And I think people were just would see what he did last year and just assume he'd do the same thing. We didn't say he was going to do the same, but we said he could do a lot of it. One thing I'm interested in, this year so far, he has 1 power play goal on 2 power play shots. So he's shooting 50%. Last year, he shot 34%. The year before that, 22%, which is like normal. But the 2 years before that, Sam Reinhart on the power play, 40% and 44% shooter. And like I'm just putting it out there. At what point is Sam Reinhart just an insanely good power play converter and like maybe the best ever? Or has lightning just struck 3 times in 4 years? So we'll see where the 50% shooting goes from here for Reinhart, but it's not like a terrible surprise or a total surprise. It's a great surprise, I guess, to see Reinhart continuing to succeed this year.
Yeah, he's incredible. Lundell, like Brian, if you recall, we traded up to pick him in our dynasty league, so I'm hoping that's going to pay huge dividends. Like, I'm not trying to win this year, so I don't care about like what he's doing. When players are injured, I'm hoping this is a sign of things to come. When Bennett's maybe out of the picture in a couple years, Barkov's a little older. Like, that's when I want to see Lundell really turn into a superstar. So I like what I'm seeing. Question about the D on Florida: are we just going to call a snoozer alert on the whole D core? Like, is there maybe just not, now that they have Adam Boqvist on the top power play, who's barely getting, he has 1 assist on the season, 1 power play assist. That's his only point. He gets no peripherals. He's not worth rostering, in my opinion. Any hope that he could be like a Montour? Like, he barely plays outside of the power play. Man, he'll get you an assist maybe every now and then. So he stinks. Now you have all these non-top power play defensemen. Forsling is probably your best option. 4 points in 7 games. Ekblad had 1 really good game against Vegas. 2 assists and 7 blocks. Mostly nothing before that, so I don't know if that's like the start of something. I kind of just wonder if is it going to be a weird season where one of these top scoring teams and there's not going to be one rosterable defenseman, or is there someone who you think, no, you got to hold on?
That's kind of how it was last year in Florida too, right? Like, remember Ekblad, like Ekman Larson was like,
but
okay.
we still held on. Like, we still thought for sure, right, like someone will be worth it.
Right. We thought Ekblad and Montour would do it, but now Ekblad isn't really getting turns on the top unit. Like, yeah, there's not a whole lot. Like, Boqvist is just, Elon, if Boqvist hasn't become Brandon Montour, I feel the year he broke out, and someone can check me on this, but I'm pretty sure he was like the new Brandon Montour essentially from the first opportunity he had. And Boqvist I don't think is going to get there. I think I made my case. It was
a shot, but it's over.
Yeah, it's over. Like, Brandon Montour had never had a shot before. Adam Boqvist, this is like shot 3 or 4 for him. First in Florida, but like it's the same story. So I think you can let go. Gustav Forsling also was someone who we were like maybe looking to. And honestly, Elon, like, he could still put up like 40 plus points, maybe 45, and get a couple shots per game. And in some formats, that makes Forsling still worthwhile for a defenseman, but not like the top end type that maybe some people were really, really hoping he'd be.
Yeah. All right, Brian, I'm going to have to go. This sucks.
Damn.
She's back up. It's not going well. So I'm going to call for an ad break, and then I'll go and hopefully come back in 5 minutes.
All right.
All right. Well, Brian, that takes us through the top 5-ish of... okay. All right. All right. Well, with that, Brian, we've still got a lot more top 20 couple fantasy point per game guys, and then some more hot streaks and cold streaks. We've got a lot still coming, so stay tuned. We'll be back in just a second. Listen to Keeping Karlsson. Okay. Sorry, everybody. One day, this won't be a thing in my life anymore. Brian, talk more about your cars. I'm sure it's great.
No, you're not. That's ridiculous. I can't believe you want me to do that. All right. Anyone want a car? I'm not a car talk guy. I gave you literally all the car talk I have. Anyone want to toss something into the chat? By the way, thank you. Super lively chat is a super fun and helpful thing for us. Take a break too. Okay. How far is too far to drive to like go check out a new car? That's a question. How's everyone feel about Honda Fits? All right. 50 miles, anything over 3 hours, depends on the deal. Yeah, my neighbor was like really set on a 2016 Lexus. It was like the last of a generation, I guess. And like, it's all he's ever driven as like a series. He just keeps trading one Lexus for another and like always like a handful of years behind. He drove like mostly to Toronto. Uh, am I Casey? Is it? Am I joking about the Honda Fit? No, I'm not. I can't get the car that I think I want because it doesn't have all the things that I want. And so rather than pay like an exorbitant price for a car that I'm like half invested in, I'd rather save like several $1,000s and drive a car for like 5 years. And then when like the current generation, like 2020s and whatever, go down in price, then they'll be in my zone. Oh, okay. Oh, we've been through this, but Kay Quinn, your avatar has a KC in it. What am I supposed to do with that? Have you thought about how much clearer you could be with your avatar and name? No, I'm joking. Yeah, I don't need to bring anything with me. I like it is straight up okay. So KC works. Courtney Quinn. Um yeah. It's A to B. Like I need nothing. I need nothing from this car except to like not spend money or time trying to fix it. That's all. Just take me where I need to go. And it can already have a lot of kilometers on it because I'm not going to drive it very many more. Drove 3.5 hours to Chattanooga. Because it was such, okay, so Ethan, I guess my question for you is if you're going to drive all the way out, are you good enough to know when you look at a car? I was at a used car lot on, yesterday. And like, we pull up and like, there's a guy who's like a customer. He's like it's just like a gravel lot with a trailer on it, which I loved. Like I wasn't expecting that, but like the owner explained like he got the land, but he's not allowed to build on it. And he seemed like a very nice guy, which I appreciated. But like there's a guy like down on his hands and knees, like checking out the undercarriages of like this like row of like 20 identical Hyundai Elantras. And like Josie like just like, are you gonna do that? I'm like like I'll fake it. Like she knows that I wouldn't know what I'm looking at. But Ethan, if I'm gonna drive 3.5 hours, I'm gonna need to drive the car back 3.5 hours to bring to my mechanic so that they can tell me whether or not I should buy this car.
Cool. Good luck. Sorry. All right, pal. Ready to keep going?
Looking for rust. I mean, I could look for rust. That's about it, though.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. That's ready to keep going?
Oh, okay.
Or
yeah. No, I'm just finishing the comment, Ethan.
No, please, yeah.
Ethan, that makes a lot of sense. All right. That's true. I could find a mechanic. Okay. All right. Giving me ideas. All right. Elon, are you ready to thank you for the car talk, everybody?
Yeah, hopefully they've been helpful, Brian.
Good luck to Noah.
You get a winner. We'll see. I could have gotten her earlier, but I don't know. We'll see. All right.
Okay.
She's in a dad phase right now for sleep anyways. Okay.
That's nice.
Not that nice when you're trying to record a podcast.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Whew. Welcome back, everyone, to our Keeping Karlsson Mega Show. Brian, we got so many more players to get to, so let's dive right in now on the next highest scoring player in terms of fantasy points per game, Inca Couple. He's a guy we talked about last week already. Mark Scheifele has continued his great season. That was actually not even including today's game where Winnipeg beat Pittsburgh 6-3 earlier today. Let me take a quick peek here. Another goal for Scheifele. This guy, unstoppable, incredible. Also, I wanted to talk about Nikolai Ehlers, who had a really big game alongside Perfetti and Pionk a couple days ago. And now I'm seeing again another big day for Nikolai Ehlers with his 2 assists. We were all just thinking about how, like, once Ehlers gets top power play, who knows what his ceiling is. And I don't know if we're seeing it, but maybe he'll fall off a bit, but we're at 7 points in 5 games now for Ehlers after he had that 3-point game against San Jose. And maybe you want to say, fine, we don't want to count San Jose games, but fine, he's point per game in the other games that he's played so far. Contract year. Obviously, he has a lot to play for. Looking really good. Anyone who drafted him probably feeling amazing. I don't even really have a question for you, but if you have any thoughts on Ehlers and the incredible
Oh,
season he's having, along with Scheifele.
I've got thoughts.
All right, let's hear
You
'em.
know what, Shifley, I didn't look too deep into. Maybe let's see how the next
We
week
talked about
goes.
him last week. He just scores goals all the time.
Yeah. Nick Ehlers, I think, is living on borrowed time here, Elon. I feel like that might be
Oh,
jarring
here it
based on
is.
your lead into this, but he's down 90 seconds a night. His shot rates are down. His shot attempts rates are down by 50%. His expected goals rates are down. Nothing about Nick Ehlers looks particularly great or different outside his point totals. It looks the same or worse for Ehlers, really. His line is also like, listen, this is all the small sample, okay? So when Ehlers goes off and has like a 95-point season, you can come back to this clip and be like, oh, you just hadn't seen enough. His line is like terrible. At 5-on-5, they have one of the worst on ice expected goals rates that I've ever seen. It's less than one expected goal per 60 minutes of play, which is like brutal. Like a bad line is usually like, or a non-offensive line is like 2.25. Of anyone we'll talk about on the show, really, that's about the lowest end. So less than one is crazy. So yeah, Nick Ehlers, good for him, I guess. Like he's taking like you know what?
guess.
I just he picked up
I love it.
3 points and 5 shots against San Jose. Outside of that, he's been fine, but he also only played 13 minutes against Pittsburgh. Even though he got 2 assists, I don't know, Elon. I'm not sold that this is it. And if I had Nick Ehlers, I would be baited. He'd be trade bait. Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm seeing only 13 minutes today is kind of weird. I do love him getting some top power play time, but yeah, maybe this is what people come to the podcast for. So if you think that Nick Ehlers is, maybe what it has just been with him is he's on my opponent's team this week, so that's why he's kind of gone off. And now that he'll be against someone else next week, he'll go back to maybe not being as elite. So yeah, I'll be curious to know if anyone follows your advice and trades Ehlers for someone. Maybe, we'll get to one of our cold streak guys. Maybe you can swap and then their fortunes will swap. We'll see. Ooh.
I mean, I'm thinking, like, Elon, if I'm not mistaken, you have Nick Ehlers in a league,
No,
right?
I don't
no.
know.
Oh, okay. Like Ehlers for Wilson. I'm gonna put that out there.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I like it. I'll take Wilson. I'm curious if there's a Wilson manager who would take that. But maybe if you say Ehlers top power play, but they'll be like, well, Wilson's also top power play. So it's a difficult negotiation. We should maybe do a separate podcast series about how to convince people to do trades that are not in their interest. That's probably a really successful skill. I don't know if that's the way I really want to play, but I definitely see other people do it. And I'm always like, how did you convince that person to make that trade? Anyhow, okay. Let's go to the next guy on the list. This is kind of a sad one because it's Macklin Celebrini at 8.5 couple points per game in his one game. And we already talked about that game. So obviously, hopefully he'll be back soon. In the meantime, though, even with Celebrini gone, the Sharks keep getting destroyed, but Granlund and Toffoli are still doing really well. Toffoli has goals in 3 straight games. Granlund had 2 straight 2-assist games going into today. And I'm seeing that it is now 2-1 for Colorado over San Jose. And that San Jose goal, William Eklund, power play, assisted by, of course, Granlund and Toffoli. I got to say, Brian, I love Mikael Granlund. He is someone that I drafted in Cupful pretty late. He had like a 70-ish point pace last season. I was like, at some point, I guess got to take this guy. I guess we'll see what happens when Celebrini is back. But right now, he's top line, top power play. Toffoli, I'm sure a lot of people were a little hesitant just because, okay, now you're going to the Sharks. Like, how good? Yeah, he's going to come play with Celebrini. Who knows how well that will go? He seems to be doing just fine even without Celebrini. So yeah, I guess there's nothing to say about Toffoli just because he's probably rostered in most leagues, unless you want to tell me that he's having an Ehlers-esque, like, unsustainable run here. Mikael Granlund, though, only 27% rostered on Yahoo. So let's throw a PTP out here right now. Come on. What are people waiting? It's like with Mikael Granlund, it's like, the name is the name of a loser. Because there was like a couple years ago, he was on Pittsburgh. He stunk. He got like the GM fired for that terrible like acquisition. And ever since, he's just gone to San Jose and has just produced. That's got to be the only reason why he's not rostered more, right? 27%. Come on, he's incredible.
I remember the good old days of Mikael Granlund. Okay, they existed. There were good times before the bad times with Granlund. And also, I think for a fact, like just a note, like you need to say pause the pod. I don't think PTP is going to
I'm
be
trying to
enough
make
of it.
something happen.
I think pause the pod happens.
All right,
It's already
that's
happening. Don't
Okay.
don't obscure the power of pausing the pod.
Fair.
And
I got
but
excited.
I'm with you though. For Mikael Granlund, he's shooting more. He's above 3 shots per game right now, which would be a first for Granlund. He hasn't even been above 2 shots per game since 2019-20, which was Granlund's first full season in Nashville and was around the beginning of the end of our belief in Mikael Granlund's fantasy relevance. He's been on the ice for 6 goals. He's assisted on 5 of them. 3 of those assists were secondary, so we're not saying that like this is completely sustainable here, but I'd still get Mikael Granlund. San Jose needs him. They need him to be one of their guys, and he's going to get a chance to be that guy, and I like the early returns, especially in the shots column.
All right, let's go to the next guy on the list here. This is a wow for me. When I saw this, I was like, wait, what? Is this true? But it is. Jake Sanderson, defenseman of the Ottawa Senators, is the top fantasy points per game defenseman currently in Cupful. Next is Makar. So Sanderson's at 8.2. Makar's at 7.6. Then there's a pretty big drop to the next guy. Like Sanderson is basically in a league of his own with Makar here. He had 3 assists in the win over Tampa, which obviously helped that. Up to now, a goal and 6 assists in 7 games. Sanderson has taken the top power play pretty decisively in Ottawa and has held it and getting it's not like 55% of the time. It's like 60 plus. Also, Jake Sanderson has 19 blocks, which is a category we count, which is obviously helping him a lot. He's also playing almost 26 minutes per game. So Jake Sanderson, his numbers so far, and it's only been 7 games. These are you look at the deep stuff, Brian. So Brian will come back with like the even strength, shot attempts and like whatever stuff like that. Maybe all I'm looking at is like, I like to look at peripherals and shots and blocks. I like to look at the ice time. I like to look at the power play. Everything is just screaming. This is like a top 10 D. Like you don't see many defensemen who play this much and produce like this. I just want to know, I know everyone says that Jake Sanderson is good. I don't think it's a hot take to be like Jake Sanderson's good, but is he really this good? Is this kind of like, when we saw, I'm trying to think of some guys who we really saw, like Chikrin had that insane year where he really like exploded, and like Matheson last, is Sanderson like now exploded, and he's going to be like for the rest of the season like a top 10 defenseman, or do you think this is like an awesome 7 games, but he's good but not this good, not even close?
So the crazy thing, so I just want you to know, I wasn't even going to go there on this episode. Like the Sanderson's numbers are so wild and wacky with 7 points in 5 games that like I was just going to be like, this is really exciting. And like, come at it from another angle. I wasn't going to come at it from the is the sustainable angle. I will point out one interesting thing, which is that Jake Sanderson has 0 points at 5-on-5 this season. He's got 6 power play points.
Oh wow.
But at 5-on-5, the Sens are doing pretty well with him on the ice, but they're only shooting 4%. So there's a whole bunch of 5-on-5 that isn't coming for Jake Sanderson yet. So you could consider that reason to stay excited or be excited. He scored on 1 of his 4 power play shots, but to have 4 power play shots in 5 games is a nice thing. Honestly, his points participation is very high on the power play. Like it's not terribly sustainable, but I wasn't going to go there. I was actually just going to say that I'm happy to see Jake Sanderson do so well, because now the power play 1 question in Ottawa, like who's going to quarterback, seems finally settled. Like that's what I'm happy to see. He's got 6 power play points in 5 games. It's like Jake Sanderson's an Edmonton Oiler in Ottawa with numbers like that. And like I'm thinking about like Thomas Chabot. Like what's the fastest Chabot? Like what's the fastest Chabot ever went from 0, like collected 6 power play points? I feel like he needs like 3 months to do that in most cases. So Sanderson seems settled. I hope the question is settled. I would buy high. Like he's a buy high if that's possible. I just missed him in all my leagues this year. Like I was always ready to draft him, and then like just before me he went, and I doubt he'll ever fall further than he did this year. Now that he has seemingly established himself as a top power play quarterback, pretty good
Yeah.
stuff.
I mean, I love how you're like, now that it's finally settled. Now just wait for next year with Carter Yakimchuk,
Oh
because I
my
know he
god.
almost made the team.
Yeah, I heard that in my head as I said it, but I ignored it.
Fair.
Let me have this just for a
I've
year.
It's got
I
to be
just
even a
need it for
couple
a
years.
year.
Even
Yeah.
if Yakimchuk makes the team next year, there's no way
I'll,
he's stealing top
I will
power play.
reconsider it like happily next September if we just have a year where the question doesn't come up. It
No,
just
I'm giving you
is.
2 years. I think we're solid
Great.
there.
I will take as long as
In
as I can get.
2026 September, we'll have that conversation. Maybe.
Okay, set a reminder.
Okay. All right. Next up on the list here. Okay, this is probably out of date now. This was when I prepped this morning. Evgeny Malkin was at 7.65, but he did nothing today. Again, for a second game in a row. Malkin is like feast or famine here. Had a few games. He had an 18-point couple game recently, earlier in the week, to help me in my matchup, get a big lead. And then my lead started slowly slipping away. A lot of it because Malkin just totally disappeared. So I don't know. I guess I shouldn't complain because Malkin's like producing a lot more than anyone expected him to. But I guess what he did at the start of the year wasn't gonna be the kind of thing where he's just gonna like go nuts every single game of the season. But yeah, nothing against Winnipeg today. We'll see how he does moving forward. The other big news in Pittsburgh is clearly in net, where Tristan Jarry sucks. He's been so bad. I don't even want to say that word. It's like it's not nice, but it's like he's been bad. Like he's been very extremely bad. Nedeljkovic finally came back from his, injury, and he had a bit of a conditioning stint, but now he's back, and he obviously didn't do that great today. Let in 5 goals on 36 shots against Winnipeg. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I've lost a lot of faith, Brian, in Jarry. Like I saw a lot of tweets about how it wasn't just he's where Pittsburgh's getting caved in. It was like he's doing badly. He's a lot of tweets of Jarry should have stopped that, that kind of thing. So I don't know. If I had him, I think I would consider dropping him. He had 3 goals against on 5 shots versus Buffalo before getting pulled in his last game. So now Ned is back. I know Ned wasn't great, so you might be tempted to be like, oh, let's see how Jarry does his next game. I don't know. I'm not feeling it. Just throwing it out there. I think Jarry might be just a drop. But I'm curious to know if you disagree, because if you disagree, then maybe I'll also change my mind.
No, I think you're right. I think I agree with you. Tristan Jarry's a drop. He's available in my Cupful League, which is that doesn't. I mean, it has happened occasionally, but I don't think it's really ever happened this early. And I'm not running to get him. I'll say this. I think with Pittsburgh, they have Nedeljkovic and Jarry and Blomqvist, and neither one seems capable of doing a couple consecutive starts in a row. So I see the Pittsburgh crease being a revolving door through the year. If I wanted to predict one guy who could win the job and close the door on the others, I still think Jarry has the best chance of the 3 of them of doing that. But that's not imminent, and I'm not going to even do a speculative ad and wait to give him a chance to do it. I'm just going to, I think it could be a while, and I'm not sure it'll even happen. The one thing I would watch is if Pittsburgh does make a coaching change at any point this season, that could be a moment to go try Tristan Jarry. But until then, until then, assuming he's not putting up runs of 3 or 4 good games in a row, leave him where he is.
Yeah, and honestly, I kind of feel this about what you're saying. I feel the same about Nedeljkovic. I'd be curious to see if he can take the job. So we'll see. He stinks. Too bad. Lars Eller doesn't stink, by the way. He has 4 goals and 2 assists in his last 4 games. It's just insane. Scored another 2 today on 6 shots. I don't know if he is a must grab. It seems like probably just a hot streak, considering we've seen a long career of Lars Eller never doing this. It's not like he's getting incredible deployment or anything. But I will say one guy I would prefer Lars Eller to, that's Michael Bunting. If you still have him, you're not paying attention. He got healthy scratched today. Only 1 assist in 6 games beforehand. Not getting the top power play. There's just no reason to hold Bunting, right? And he's still rostered in whatever 19% of leagues I think I saw in Yahoo. So it's not so high, but it's still way too high. So if you need a pen, go get Lars Eller over Michael Bunting. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and don't forget Ricard Raquel, who might be in the mix too. He did well. 4 points in his last 5 games. He's on the top power play Was he today? I put a question mark. I didn't actually
Looks
fully
like it. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it was only like one power play. It looks like.
Yeah.
So
No, but he wasn't. No, but it was largely Rust playing with Crosby and Malkin,
oh
and then
yeah,
Raquel got like a separate turn there.
you're right. Kevin
Interesting.
Hayes scored a power
Yeah.
play goal that Raquel assisted on.
All
All
right.
these pens. Who
I
knows?
mean,
I don't know.
I'll still take Raquel over Eller, but I'll Bunting. I'm sure will be valuable again at some point. But
You think so?
yeah, I do.
Eh.
I think he'll have his moment of relevance again before the end of the season.
Okay. Okay. We'll see. Eric Carlson has 5 points in his last 6. Again, like someone on my opponent's roster, a couple this week, so that explains that. But
So
good for him.
if you had Carlson, would you
Yes.
be what would you what would you do? Like I've been thinking of trading for Carlson in one of my leagues, and I'm trying to be like, do I want to
Who are you
take
going
that
to
on?
offer? What are you
Yeah,
offering?
I know. Now you're gonna laugh at me. I'm trying to put a package involving Morgan. It's not straight up Morgan Riley. It's like Morgan Riley in a upgrade on a winger.
So you're going to try to trade someone whose like stock is falling because he's been bumped from the top power play to get Eric Carlson. Yeah, I mean, I would do that.
But I'm gonna send a
definitely.
winger over too.
Which Michael Bunting?
No, Elon. I'm gonna make a good offer. I promise. It's not
Let's
gonna
hear
be an
it.
embarrassing offer. I don't know what
So
it
that
is. Like it's another league. I don't have it all in front of me.
Yeah, I like Carlson.
You would be
like,
impressed with some of the thoughts I've had. Honestly.
Okay, I think that he could be like a 55 to 60 point guy. So I think that's totally reasonable.
Yeah, it's just injury.
There's injury. There's also just the downs. It's not just like it's also just the downside that he can like not be that. Like he can be like a 50-point guy.
Yeah.
So, but I like him. I'm always just happy to see him do well. I'm happy to see him do well not on my fantasy team because I don't want the stress. You know, like he's like mainly I play fantasy now. I'm like a robot. I'm just focused on my team. I don't cheer for many things outside of fantasy. So I have one guy that I've always liked that I cheer for. So it's just nice to be able to do that stress free. But that's Pittsburgh. Let's go on to the next guy in this list of the top 20 fantasy points per game. Kirill Kaprizov, 7.4. And hey, we talked about him last week. He's doing great. He's incredible. Lately, Kaprizov has been centered by Marco Rossi, and that's even with Joel Eriksson-Ek returning yesterday versus Columbus. But Rossi held the top line spot. Not top power play, unfortunately, but Rossi's producing. He's got a 4-game point streak. He's on the second power play for whatever it's worth. If he's holding the spot, centering the top line, even without top power play, like how interested are we in a Marco Rossi that's also producing?
I'm interested. I was interested last week in a Marco Rossi that's producing, so I still am. That's the full answer.
Okay,
Like go back to you could
go back to
replay
last week.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe he does. Is there a spot for Rossi on the top power play? I'm just looking at who Minnesota is rolling right now, and it's Zuccarello, Eriksson-Ek, Boldy, Kaprizov. Yeah, so it's like who's he? I guess he could be bumping like a Zuccarello at some point. Is the only realistic option, and like Zuccarello's doing fine. So maybe there's just not a spot for him until there's an injury. But I'm definitely interested in Rossi. Obviously, high pedigree. He's been a bit of a disappointment, but you can say the same about Byfield and Lafreniere, and now they're looking really great. And so maybe Rossi just needed a bit more time. By the way, Joel Eriksson-Ek, don't feel too sad that he's not centering Kaprizov. He still had a great game in this win over Columbus. He didn't get a point, but 5 shots, 4 hits, 2 blocks, still on the top power play. I wouldn't be too worried. Maybe do you disagree, Brian? Do you think like it's a big hit for Eriksson-Ek if he falls from the top line? I guess it's pretty not great, but he's still on the top power play. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, and I don't know that it's like for sure settled. That's going to be the way it's going to land. Like we see Minnesota switch it up regularly enough, and right now I think Ryan Hartman's out of the lineup too, right? Which might make things solid for the moment, but then they'll change again. I mean, Eriksson-Ek is still playing with Matt Boldy, right?
Yeah, it was Rossi, Kaprizov, Zuccarello in the last game. So yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
I guess the big concern would be if it's like Rossi, Kaprizov, and Boldy, and then Eriksson-Ek is stuck with like, whatever, Zuccarello.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like Ryan Hartman. Oh, I'm looking at last 3 games. Forget me. Sorry.
So.
Or hey, how about I'll retake that instead of. Yeah. Actually, I'm just good. You could end where you ended.
Okay. Also, by the way, on Minnesota, I think I might need to eat a little crow, which I'm always very happy to do. I'm the
You love
question
crow.
master. I love crow. Well, Yeah, I haven't tried it, but I'm sure it's fine if it's cooked well. A lot of foods are probably good if they're cooked well, right? Like I feel like it's weird just like I don't like that. Like try it from the best chef in the world, and then let's see how it tastes. But okay, Philip Gustafsson's having a great year so far. So he's played 4 games, 950 save percentage. I was really like going hard in our preseason episode. Like he stinks, Fleury stinks. It's time for Wallstedt to come in even this season and take the job. But like we'll see. It's only 4 games, but Gustafsson having a huge bounce back from last year. Kudos to anyone who drafted him. You got him really late, and you might have like a volume starter that's good on like a good team. Question is, of course, like now if you have him, like do you sell before he bottoms out like he did last year? How can you predict? Like, but do you have any strong feelings about former Ottawa Senators legend Philip Gustafsson?
I no, I well, like the pedigree is still there, right? He's getting one thing to mention. I think is Gustafsson's getting incredible play in front of him at 5-on-5. It's like 955 expected Fenwick save percentage versus 945 last year, which is already very high. But Gustafsson's getting even better protection this year. He's also performing about 23 save points above it. He's got a 964 overall 5-on-5 save percentage, which ranks third in the NHL for goalies who've played about as much time, behind Jake Ottinger and Kevin Lankinen. Elon, there's 25 goalies who've seen about as much volume or more than Gustafsson, and he's third in even strength save percentage, which is a good place for him to be. We've seen short runs from Gustafsson before. I'd love for it to continue. I guess the question is, how badly do you need this? Do you want or need this to work out? Right? Because there's I don't know. I don't know. It basically, this is all about like your risk tolerance, right? Like if you're happy having gotten this far with Gustafsson and being like, yeah, maybe I can flip him for another asset and get off the ride now, that's great. Or if you want to get on the ride now, also great. Unfortunately, I have no advice as to whether which one of those two is the right decision.
Yeah, that's fair. So basically, you're kind of saying like it's not a guarantee this is going to continue. I'm seeing Schwab Squad in the chat here saying Gustafsson started red hot last year as well, and we all know how that ended. So yeah, maybe. I mean, if I had him, I'd probably try to trade him. But at the same time, I wouldn't give him up for nothing.
Okay, but do we trust Schwab Squad, who just above that said nothing could make an olive taste good?
That is a really bad take for sure. Olives are incredible, but that's okay. I still like him. He's a good patron, good friend of the show. Shams is also saying that Wallsted's not doing so well in the AHL to start, for whatever that's worth. But okay, let's move on now to the Columbus Blue Jackets, because next on this list, another big surprise. This is top 20 in fantasy points per game here. Igor Shinnikov, 7.4. He's got points in all 5 of his games so far. 3 goals and 4 assists, 17 shots in those 5 games. That's like over 3 shots per game. We're looking at a top-line, top power play guy. Like he's someone that was talked about on the short shifts with Jeremy and Shams on Thursday. And they're saying how maybe this team has some valuable guys, and I really didn't see this happening. So maybe some more crow for me. Yum, yum, yum. They, in this loss to Minnesota, they rolled Monahan, Marchenko, Chinnikov on the top line, and then those guys. Actually, Chinnikov wasn't even on the top power play. Excuse me. Monahan, Marchenko, Cole Sillinger, and Fantilli. I guess Columbus is just doing crazy things. But yeah, Chinnikov, like, there's no way he's going to keep this up, right? Like, I assume he's like a pause the pod to grab him just because he's doing so well. But at the same time, try to sell. Can you be both? Is that reasonable? Also, by the way, I will say it's a bummer about Kent Johnson being hurt. He also had a point in all of his games to start the season, 4 games, and then he got hurt. If you could, grab Kent Johnson and stash him, he's a super high pedigree guy. Maybe it would be nice to just have dibs on him for when he comes back from his injuries. But yeah, what do you think? Just Chinnikov? Is there any chance Chinnikov sticks this high, or is he about to have a huge plummet here?
There's like some chance. Like I'm interested. Like I'm actually wondering why you usually don't dismiss like this, like so quickly. Usually you leave that to me.
Well, what's his pedigree? I don't know. He's not someone that I ever expected to do much. He was drafted 21st overall.
Who the heck is Igor Chinnikov?
No, I know him. He's been around.
Elon, he's a first round pick from 20. You love first round picks.
Yeah, there's some pedigree. 21st overall.
What did he ever do to you? He hasn't played a lot in the AHL, but he's been over a point per game in like 10, 11 career AHL games.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, so
Elon.
lock it
Like,
in. Brian's
they're-
saying
they're
Igor Chinnikov, a couple
well, I'm not
points per
saying
game at least.
lock it in. Okay, now I hear the whole sentence. He has 3 or more shots on goal, Chinnikov, in 4 of 5 games. He has goals in 3 of 5, assists in 3 of 5. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pause the pod at this moment, right? Because there's a lot of guys who are doing things that we haven't quite seen them do before.
Which maybe isn't fair to the listeners because it's like they don't have that many open roster spots to go get all these guys.
Yeah, so maybe maybe we need. I don't know. Since we started thinking about pause the pod, I feel like it's losing its way. We're gonna
Well, it's just like at least pause the pod to consider
go see if he's available.
strongly.
You've got to consider Chinnikov and also Marchenko. Kirill Marchenko. He has
Right.
fewer shots, but big minutes, and 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points in 5 games. The rain on the parade in Columbus is that they are 4th in the league in team shooting percentage at 5-on-5. They're shooting almost 13%, behind only 3 teams, Vegas, Tampa, and the highest shooting team in the league, the Washington Capitals.
Wow.
Yeah. At 5-on-5.
They've only played 4 games. At 5-on-5, you
Yeah.
also have to say. Yes, of course. All right, we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I'd be curious to see some more data from Columbus. This is definitely wild. They did lose that last game against Minnesota, so we'll see if they can keep this up. I know they obviously have a lot of emotion right now. Like it's exciting to see. I would love to see them keep scoring a lot of goals. We'll see how it goes. Also, I should mention Merzlikins is injured, but I don't think it's serious. So, for what it's worth, maybe you consider like looking at that. But also, I don't know if you're going to want to even grab. I don't know. I'm blanking on his name right now. Maybe I won't even make an edit point. Because, I don't know, maybe I deserve to look dumb here. What's the name of that guy that's been the backup or the tandem guy on Columbus since forever?
Tarasov?
Tarasov, that's it. You can go on Tarasov, maybe. But I don't know if I would. Next up on the list from Vegas, Jack Eichel, another guy we discussed last week, had a great start to the year. The main thing that's changed since we talked last week about Vegas is that Olofsson is hurt. We haven't really heard much. He got hurt like a couple days ago. I don't know if Shams, you've seen anything more recent, but in the interim, Pavel Dorofeyev has taken over on the top power play. He's also on the second line with Hurdle, and now Dorofeyev's doing well. 2 goals in his last 4 games. I guess I shouldn't say he's doing like too well, but scoring a couple goals. Is there any interest in a top power play Dorofeyev? I'm not going to ask pause the pod. He's not that caliber, but it seems like he's in a good spot now if he's taking that Olofsson spot where Olofsson was doing really well on the top power play.
Yeah, the thing with Dorofeyev is he's like about as inconsistent and frustrating that way as Olofsson is. Like, it's promising that on Thursday, Dorofeyev saw more than 14 minutes for the first time of the season. He played 3 games with low minutes and then finally broke through. He saw 18 minutes on Thursday, then back down to 16 minutes on Saturday. Still respectable. This was all basically thanks to time on the top power play, though, which is really the key reason here to be interested in Dorofeyev.
Okay, let's finish this up. All right, Brian, and the last name on this top 20 list, because of course there's been some duplicates here, like with, I didn't mention when I mentioned Jake Sanderson, Brady Tkachuk, and Stützle are also in the top 25. A couple other duplicates along the way. But let's end with Cole Caulfield having an incredible start to the season. Again, he's another guy we already discussed last week. He scored 2 more goals yesterday in the 4-3 loss to the Islanders. There were some scares with Slavkovsky and Matheson potentially being hurt, but they both played yesterday. The only injury that seems to be for real now is Caden Gooley, which is a bummer. I was enjoying him as like a good periffs guy who was getting some even strength points for me. I will mention on Montreal, Mike Matheson still holding top power play. It seems at times like, any minute now, like Hudson's going to take it. But no, Matheson's there. He has 4 assists in his last 4 games. He's still getting a lot of blocks. So maybe I've been too dump Math. Like I never said dump Matheson, but just be worried about him potentially losing the top power play. But he's still holding. He's doing well. And I should also mention Lane Hudson now is pointless in 3 games. Hudson is still getting 3 minutes. I'll tell you my opinion before we throw to you. I think now would be I'm hoping Lane Hudson gets dropped so I can grab him. And I know I'm giving it away now because now people in my division know I feel that way. But I still think it's just a matter of time. It's just a hunch. But at the same time, Mike Matheson's doing really well. And it's a good spot to be on the top power play in Montreal. So that's just where my head is at, which is kind of just swirling and it's mush, it seems, from when I listen to what I'm saying.
Swirling in its mush. That's cool. Yeah, I'm interested, Elon, in this desire you have for Lane Hudson to be dropped so you could pick him up and add like a guy who's playing a lot of minutes, but also on the second power play. And yeah, maybe we were too quick to be over and done with Mike Matheson, which I think I was saying in draft. Like, I was not taking Lane Hudson when others were very excited about Lane Hudson, and like I felt kind of dumb for not doing it at the time, and I don't feel necessarily smart, but it was partially because I don't. It didn't. Who knew, right, at that moment, whether there was really going to be a true changing of the guard and how quickly it would happen. I will say that Matheson, though, is still like he's not doing what we want him to do, like, fully. He's getting a few blocks a night, but that's about it. He only has 7 shots in 6 games. He's got 2 power play points over 6 games, which is fantastic. If he can keep that up, we'll be very happy. But it's not. I'd like some more shots for Mike Matheson. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair. Okay, so Brian, with that, we've gone through the top performing players so far on the season. There's still a lot of intriguing players I want to get to, including some goalies, including you mentioned Kevin Lankinen. You know we're talking about Kevin Lankinen. So let's dive in. Sorry, I want to edit point here to put in an ad break. Brian, I want to start this next section of the podcast of like some other hot streaks and intriguing players that aren't necessarily in like the top 20 in fantasy points per game in a cupful. We got to start in Toronto, okay? Oliver Ekman-Larsson on the top power play. He doesn't have a power play point yet, but he's actually done pretty well. Like, at even strength, 4 assists in his last 4 games. That's 4 games. I brought OEL up on Matchup Maximizer yesterday, saying if he's somehow still available to you, have to add him, especially because Toronto plays 4 times next week, including like tomorrow, Monday. There's only 1 game tomorrow, Toronto and Tampa, so why not? But it doesn't matter the schedule, right? Top power play on Toronto, no guarantee it lasts forever, but you know, Morgan Riley's always been kind of like who's gonna bump him, and he always seems to hold on. We have a new coach now, though, in Toronto. Is it possible that OEL holds this job and has a really incredible season, and he ends up being like one of the best early free agent ads of anyone who grabs him? I'm curious to know what you think about what the upside is here, and I guess at the same time, what's the Morgan Riley upside/downside if he stays off the top power play for the rest of the season? So far, only 2 points in 5 games for Morgan Riley. Obviously, losing PP1 is not going to help.
No, it won't help Morgan Riley to lose the top power play, but he's never really been like a huge top power play producer, right? So that's the silver lining here for any Morgan Riley managers, is that, usually in the last few years, he's gotten like about 20 power play points, and he's never really gotten a whole lot more than that. So on power play 2, you could still expect Morgan Riley to get close to 10. And so if he was about a 60-ish point player before, now he's like a 50-ish point player. Again, it could be like he's been close to 70 a couple times in the last 3 years, so maybe he's a 55-point player still. But I think that's the downside in leagues that, give you extras for power play points specifically. You'll feel the hurt a little more than in leagues where like every point is just a point, like the cupful, and because the power play is already an opportunity, right? You don't need to, anyway. Well, we've talked about that in the past, but yeah. So I think Morgan Riley is not like a drop because he's not on the top power play, and I think you could just sort of downgrade your expectation by about 10 points and maybe a handful of shots too.
Okay, but Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I assume is like nothing more to say.
I'm a moron. Like I feel really like all of it. Like people in my allied chat were like, "What should I put down on Oliver Ekman-Larsson? He was dropped, or I'm gonna go get him." I just assumed he was gone in my division, and then I checked the transactions page like at some point. I'm like, oh, someone just my opponent for next week actually just added Oliver Ekman-Larsson. That's too bad. I missed the boat. So yeah, if he's still out there, I'd go get him. I'm also not certain that Morgan Riley isn't going to get another kick at the top power play at some point. Like this could just be a trial on addition. I feel like it's not going to be a cold turkey situation unless it's really, really like straight up gangbusters from here on out.
Yeah, obviously we need more data to see how things go. They're trying something, and it's a great opportunity for OEL here, who I think now, now that he's not on that crazy contract, he doesn't seem like as, bad of a player to have on your team. Now I was like, oh, he's pretty good. for before it was just like seemed like an anchor because of how much he was getting paid. I will mention also on Toronto, Anthony Stolarz. Man, he is also he's really taking advantage of the opportunity he's gotten with Wool being hurt. Stolarz has played 4 games so far, still hasn't led more than 2 goals in any of those games. He's been so good. I think it's becoming more and more unlikely that Wool is going to come back and like take the net and be the starter. Like it seems so unlikely, right? Like Wool's going to come back at some point. I'm sure he'll get some starts. To me, I feel like we're looking at upside for Wool as 50-50, and maybe Stolarz is just better and gets more starts. It's really hard for me to imagine Stolarz becoming a backup like with how he started the season. Obviously, it's a very small sample size, but this is making me less and less interested about having shares in Joseph Wool for whenever he comes back from whatever injury he has.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The better Stolarz plays, the harder it will be for Wool to make an impression. The line that I usually say is we don't expect players to lose their jobs because of an injury. We expect they'll at least have a chance to take it back regardless of what's happened while they're gone. That rule is like generally the rule. There are some exceptions to it. So I think Wool will have a shot, but Anthony Stolarz is building his resume in the meantime. And like you said, making it harder for Joseph Wool to come out as a tandem or 1A guy.
Yeah, and obviously anyone who grabs Stolarz out of free agency, you're very smart because who knows how long this injury is going to last or if Wool will come back and then aggravate something. Obviously, I don't want to put that into the universe, but Stolarz is like, while Wool is out, Stolarz is like one of your top fantasy goalies you can get. Starting volume goalie on Toronto, playing so well. That's, I guess, one of those arguments for why you don't necessarily need to invest so much in goalies as long as you're savvy enough to get guys like this. Let's go to another goalie in a similar vein who I'm kind of kicking myself, Brian, similar to you with OEL, because just yesterday I was thinking to myself, maybe I should just like stream in Kevin Lankinen. I have an open goalie spot, and he's gotten the start announcement, and I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna think about it. I was busy with family. Next thing I know, he got nabbed. Had a great game. Just shut out Philly yesterday, stopping 26. That's the 3rd game for Lankinen. All 3 games have been great. The coach said afterwards that Lankinen has basically got the net for the next while since he's playing so well. Like, basically it's his net until he loses it. So yeah, lost opportunity, especially for a guy that I've loved forever. I still have in my dynasty league that going hard for the win this year. So I'm happy about that. And I'm hoping Lankinen's going to make me seem really smart. But we'll see how long this lasts. And obviously at some point, maybe Demko comes back and makes things complicated. But it seems to me like at this point, it's pretty clear that you want to have Lankinen and you don't want Shilovs because he's quickly falling out of the conversation and becoming just a backup.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Elon. And sorry, I don't mean to sound resigned. That I had She Loves as like my last pick in the cupful, and I was really hoping that he'd
worth a shot for last pick.
It was worth a shot. It's just bummer it didn't work out. And Derek of Short Shifts fame was able to get Lankinen before I was. So good for him. He's been enjoying that, and good for anyone who loves their boy Lanky, who seems to be the starter for the meanwhile in Vancouver.
Yeah, and I hope for him he, gets a good contract next year, because that was really unfair how last year he was like so solid as the backup in Nashville, making $2 million, and he had to take this big pay cut just because of the game of musical chairs with goalies, and just everyone signed a goalie, and next thing you knew there were no jobs for Lankinen. So good for him. Hopefully he keeps this up and then gets an actual long-term fair contract for how good he is. But now that we're on Vancouver, of course we also got to talk about Elias Pettersson, who has not had a good start to the year. And I feel like I'm getting deja vu. I feel like we've had this conversation before about Pettersson. He had an assist finally in the last game, which was his first point since his assist he had in the season opener. Looks like the lines for Vancouver are there rolling Pettersson with Garland and Höglander right now, which doesn't seem great. But I mean, if Pettersson is as good as he has shown he can be, then it shouldn't matter who he's playing with. But yeah, Brian, like we have this convo at the start of it feels like every season, every second season, like, and I feel like whenever I ask you, like, should we be nervous as a Pettersson manager? You're like, he's great. Like, I'm not too, like, he's the kind of guy where like, I don't worry about this kind of thing because I know he's going to turn it around. Like now that it's happening again, do you feel the same way? Or is this starting to make you nervous? Though I guess on the flip side, he's had these slow starts and still has ended up having, like last year, he was really great by the end of the year. So yeah, I'm really curious to get your take on Pettersson.
Yeah, Pettersson, it took a while for him to be good, and it was a bit of a painful wait, but he got there, ended up with a 90-point pace. But the upside that we hope for is 100 points plus, which is what Pettersson did a couple years back when he peaked above 3 shots per game. And so far, Pedersen just has 8 shots through 5 games. That's not great. That's not what we want to see. And last year, the 90-point pace going into this year, I'd say, well, start there and we can hope for more. And I'm trying not to be too down about it, but the shots are getting me down here, Elon. And so this start from Pedersen is making me feel more like, okay, we'll start with 90 points and then hope he hangs on to being able to get there. Like, I think Pedersen's going to be fine, but I was thinking that this was going to be a year where we see whether he's a 90-point guy or a 105-point guy. And, if you like Elon, I'm gonna guess closer to 90. If it's like if I'm trying to pick which one he's closest to, I could be wrong. I'm really just basing that off of a hunch, and so you can make your own hunch and act accordingly. Like we'll keep watching to see what other data comes in. Also, I just want to mention before you chime in, Jake DeBrusk is safe. He's playing with JT Miller and Brock Besser.
Phew.
And it's Sprung that has been bumped all the way down the lineup to make room for Hoglander and Garland.
Yeah, that always happens with Sprong. He doesn't hold these spots for too long. He's good while he has them. Yeah, with Pedersen, I think Canucks fans will just be happy to take that 90 you're throwing out there. If it's like, sorry, he's not 100, he's only 90, like, God, sold. Please, just, start getting points again. Shams is saying here that in his cupful division, Pedersen was traded for Tim. Saying that in his cupful division, Pedersen was traded for Tim Stützle. He's asking how we feel about that trade. For context, Stützle 7 points in 5 games so far, having an incredible start. And it's just a couple years ago that Stützle was a 95-point guy. And I think a lot of people, and definitely this start is making the case for last season's down year being more of an aberration for Stützle. So I don't know if you disagree, Brian. I like that for the Stützle manager. I feel like maybe Stützle is also a 90-point guy. Maybe with upside for more, while Pedersen is struggling. Stützle's doing well. I think I'd take Stützle, but
Yeah,
Pedersen was obviously drafted higher.
yeah, like in like a reasonable amount higher, like at least 10 spots higher, maybe closer to 15. You can check kkupfl.com to find the ADP if you really want to know. Yeah, I don't know if if I had Pedersen, if I'd do it straight up, but that might be the only option, right? If I try and get like something to sweeten, but I'm with you, Elon. I think Stützle has as good a chance, has a pretty decent chance at keeping up or beating out Pedersen.
Yeah, the nice thing about Stützle is I feel like he's on the clear top line. Like Pedersen now is the Miller line the top line or the Pedersen line? Maybe that's just semantics and who even cares. But like Stützle's playing with Brady Tkachuk. Actually, the last game it was Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, and Michael Amadio. I didn't even realize that. It's a good spot. If you're in a super deep league and that holds, maybe take a look at Michael Amadio. Not that he's gotten any points. He had no points and no shots, but that's a good spot. But anyways, I like Stützle. We have him in our dynasty, so obviously I'm going to be rooting for him. Okay, let's stick back with the goalies again. We've talked Woll Stolars, we've talked Lankinen. Last week we talked about Detroit, and we were talking. This is how quickly things change, right? Cam Talbot had a really good first game of the season, and then I was like, "Oh, is this for real? Like, is Cam Talbot going to have the great start that he had last year?" Obviously, you were skeptical. To be fair, I think I was skeptical. I'm just asking the question. I hope that came across, or maybe I'm just deluding myself now. But anyway, now Talbot had a bad game, and now Alex Lyon has gotten in, and he's had 2 good games in a row. So all of a sudden now Alex Lyon is looking like our for now starter on Detroit, because this is a team that's trying to go for the playoffs, right? They're not gonna okay, well no, let's try to make the most of our Cam Talbot signing. I'm sure they're just they signed Talbot, they had Husso and Lyon. It seems to me like the thinking was just hopefully just one of them is good. I don't care who. So I don't know. Lyon does this every year, right? At some point where he ends up taking the job and rolling with it for a little while. How would you rank an Alex Lyon? Let's say if you have Lankinen out there in free agency, you have a Stolars out there in free agency. Is Lyon for sure the third, or is he close to those guys to you?
Behind, Stolars and who?
And Lankinen.
And Lankinen, yeah. Yeah, Lyon's number 3 amongst those. Because I think Lankinen and Stolars are both on better teams and both seem set to be playing more regular games. We'll
see.
That seems easy to me. Do you want to make a case to the contrary, or we're just very much in agreement?
No. Okay, Stolars I think is I think the downside of Stolars would be that Woll comes back and Stolars just becomes a tandem, but who knows when that's going to happen. I think the downside with Lankinen is if as much as I love Kevin Lankinen, he's like for now he's looking good. I do agree with you, but I think the case would be for Alex Lyon is like, why can't we just make the case that maybe he's in line for just as many games as Kevin Lankin at this point? Like, I think just like Husso and Talbot have struggled and have opened the door for Lyon to take over, I think the same has happened with Kevin Lankin over Shilovs. So I don't really see a huge difference. So you do say that Vancouver is potentially a better team. Like, I don't, yeah, I agree with you, but also I think that Alex Lyon should not be ignored, and maybe he's someone you want to grab. But obviously, as we've found from last week, things can change pretty quickly in this Detroit net. I guess that's what happens when you have three guys. So Husso's in the minors. Maybe he's not coming back. Alex Lyon's probably better than Cam Talbot. I know you feel that way. You hate Cam Talbot.
Well, hate is a really
Yeah, I
strong
know.
word. But yeah, I think he's definitely vulnerable.
Okay. I will also mention Detroit. Vladimir Tarasenko. He's a snoozer, right? He was drafted in most couple divisions, if not all of them. You know, he's had a great career. He's had some really amazing seasons. At this point, Tarasenko seems like just a depth guy. He has 2 goals in 5 games. If he was dropped in my div, I don't think I'd grab him. Another guy with 2 points in 5 games is Patrick Kane. He is someone that I think is much more likely to bounce back. I think that, you know, just seeing the deployment, like Kane is getting top power play. I've saw some tweets about how like Kane has maybe had some bad luck, like he's had like good like on ice numbers, but just pucks haven't been going in. So are you with me on both of these? That Tarasenko let him go and Patrick Kane, if someone else let him go, dive in ASAP?
Yeah, that's for Patrick. Yes, I'm just like reframing what you said. Tarasenko, let him go. Yeah, like what is I don't know. I wonder if Tarasenko can still be good again. Like, it's just been a long time since he's been good. It's a bit of a bummer. He's on the outside looking in of a loaded Detroit top power play unit. His ice time is dropping. He did play some shifts on the top line Saturday night, but not primarily. And meanwhile, so yeah, let him go. That's Vladimir Tarasenko. And Patrick Kane, he's on the inside of that loaded Detroit power play 1 unit. So for me, that's a good enough reason to hold on and see what another week brings.
All right, we are on the same page. I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this next guy, Brian. Philip Broberg. Holy moly, what a start to his stint with St. Louis. He's not playing 13 minutes a game anymore. He's not getting scratched. Philip Broberg is a key piece on this team, and he's showing it because he's got a point in every single game this season. He's got 1 goal and 5 assists in the 6 games that he's played, and that's spread out very evenly. Like I said, 1 point every single game. Is he like, I don't want to be corny here, but you know, D is usually hard to find in fantasy. Is this a pause the pod? Like, do you just go and grab Philip Broberg if he's still out there? Like, and also just like, this must be making the Oilers look so bad because they've had this guy in their organization for so long. They never gave him a shot. I feel like the plan was that next year they were finally going to give him a proper shot, but they waited too long. You know, they had this terrible offer happen that they weren't able to match. Terrible for them, obviously great for St. Louis, and it's paying off so well for Broberg. It's making the Blues look like geniuses, making the Oilers look like dunces so far. Unless you're going to come on and say there's no chance that Broberg keeps this up. And
Yeah,
this is
I'm
just
gonna
a
say
mirage.
if you want to look like as much of a genius as the St. Louis Blues, sell high on Broberg. He's not a hold. This isn't gonna keep up all season long. He's been in on every goal scored while he's on the ice. His shooting percentage is above 10% at 5-on-5, and Broberg still doesn't shoot. So I'll put all that together. Elon, I hear you're pumped, but I'm going to move on from Philip Broberg, especially if I can recoup some assets while I do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know you're saying I'm pumped. The guy has points in every game. What am I supposed to say? Like, I'm throwing it out there, and you're slamming him down just like you did. Who was the guy earlier in the show that you said stinks and not to worry about? Oh, Ehlers. Broberg and Ehlers. Throw him to the curb. Not going to keep it up, according to Brian. And who am I to disagree? Since we're on St. Louis, Jake Neighbors had a really bad start to the year, pointless in 4, but now he scored a goal in 2 straight games. He was dropped in my Cupful division, Brian, and I grabbed him on waivers after he had those pointless 4 games, and I've gotten those 2 goals, which have been nice. Looks like I'm going to need them to win this matchup. Do you think that Jake Neighbors is going to end up being a season-long hold for me, or do you think at some point I'm also going to kick him to the curb after a slow run?
Yeah, he actually, I'm not as sure about. He's playing with Zach Bolduc and Pavel Buchnevich. He did nothing through his first 4 games. Then Neighbors picked up a goal on 4 shots to finally appear this season. His power play time doesn't seem so consistent. At least he hits in the meantime. I'm still wondering, and I think this is what I've said before for Neighbors. Like, I'm still wondering if it's this year or next or the next one after that for the former first round pick and 22-year-old to actually break out and be fantasy relevant consistently. I don't know. He's not there yet, but I think he's worth like picking up every so often and seeing if this might be the moment.
I will push back a little bit about how you said the power play is not consistent. It seems like he's like pretty solidly on that top power play and has been all season, unless you could find some reason that I'm wrong about that. But I'm looking at the game log and he's well above 50% on pretty much every game.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess we'll see. Like, he scored 27 goals last year, and so I'm curious to see if he can build on that. Like I said, goals in 2 straight, so we'll see what happens with Neighbors moving forward. I'm hoping it was a smart nab for me, but I agree with you, Brian. It's definitely not a sure thing. People in my division are smart, so the person who dropped him obviously has reasons to give up on him. But I think it could be a nice breakout. So if he's in free agency in your league, fellow fantasy player listening, maybe consider him as well, especially now that he's starting to actually do stuff. Next up, now he's starting to do stuff. One last thing on St. Louis, Joel Hofer. Let's add him to the list of interesting goalies. 3 games, 3 wins. Got the second start in a row after shutting out the Islanders. Got the big win over Carolina yesterday. What are your thoughts on the Hofer-Binnington tandem at the moment? Is it like, it's the obvious question. Like, should Binnington managers be very nervous? And should people who see Hofer available in free agency be jumping all over that? Does he have Alex Lyon, Kevin Lankinen upside?
I mean, I'd put him more in the Lion category than the Lankinen, just because I think Lankinen has like decisively earned starts, and Lion is still just like part of a rotation. And as good as Hofer has been, I'm not sure that he's going to be able to kick Binnington to the curb. Both St. Louis goalies have been good. Hofer has been better at 5-on-5. I'm not sure. Like, I actually just don't know, Elon, whether there's an opportunity for Hofer to get the job outright. But I did raise an eyebrow. Like, I was already surprised when I saw he got a second straight start, and then he crushed it. And so my eyebrows are raised, and I'm looking and I'm watching to see how much more he gets. But I also, even if he plays well for like 3 or 4 starts, I still feel like this ends with Hofer and Binnington sharing time.
Right, yeah. So that probably Hofer's not just going to be getting huge volume unless Binnington is like especially terrible. And it's been a while since Binnington has been especially terrible, though it has happened in the past. So definitely something to keep watching. Taylor is saying in the chat here, next week I'm going to be pretty much exclusively going for goalies with my ads because of the schedule. I talked about a matchup maximizer yesterday. It's a really weird schedule. Hard to find skaters who are going to get you a lot of off-day games. So yeah, that's a good point. Like, maybe all these guys we've mentioned, if they're available for free agency, next week is the week to try out a Hofer, try out a Lion. We already said, like, definitely get Lankinen and Stolar, so that's not even a question. But yeah, maybe it raises the value or the what's the word? What's the word for when something... Oh, the appeal. Raises the appeal of a guy like Hofer or Lyon even more just because of that bad schedule next week, if you can fit in goalies on those busy days. Let's go next to Seattle. We're not going to talk goalies. We know. Grubauer stinks. I think we talked about that last week. He stinks. Like, Decord is better. I want to talk about Jared McCann. He's having an incredible start to the year. He had an assist yesterday after 2 multi-point games. We're up to 8 points in 6 games for McCann. He's probably rostered in all of your leagues, but obviously if you have him, good for you. Maybe he'll do better than he did last year. The main person playing with McCann has been Jordan Eberle, who has goals in 3 straight himself. We're up to 5 goals and 2 assists in 6 games for Eberle. Could this be for real? Like, Jordan Eberle, he used to be good. Feels like a million years ago. There's no way he's going to be like actually worth holding all season.
No,
right?
No. Yeah, we're not going to get caught here. I mean, Eberle is like this guy who is... I feel like he and I have a lot of history where when I stream him, he does nothing, and when I'm like over him, he does everything. We seem to have this dynamic going, and I've been a long time Eberle believer, but I feel like he's very rarely rewarded me for that. He's got 5 goals on 8 shots so far. One of those came on the power play. He's had tons of power play time, 12 minutes combined on Thursday and Saturday. I guess that's good, but it's also bad. It means no one's scoring quick enough before they can stop racking up those power play minutes. So yeah, don't expect Jordan Eberle's hot run to last. Just enjoy it if you were able to get in on it.
All right. Then I'll mention also Vince Dunn is hurt. Brandon Montour played 26 minutes in yesterday's game, had an assist and 6 shots, so he's doing what he can to earn the big contract that he got. So uh, Dunn and Montour both have been good to start the year. Maybe they'll just both kind of be good, and that'll just be it. And neither will like explode because they're both there to take opportunities away from each other. But they can both just have really solid seasons, and be worth rostering, and be decent draft picks in fantasy. Let's go to Carolina. Shane Gostisbehere has scored in each of his last 3 games, 2 of them power play goals. This is the Gostisbehere story, right? He's doing well on the power play, but he's getting low time on ice, like at even strength. And so the question is, like, how do we project the rest of the season? To me, this is kind of like Adam Boqvist, but that's actually at least doing well on the power play. How do you think the rest of the season is going to go for Gostisbehere?
I think similar to this, but with fewer goals scored. I think he's going to be like a weird guy to roster. He's, he won't play enough 5-on-5 minutes to do a whole lot of damage there. But like, if you're in need of like a stream, I think he'll probably be helpful that way. Or like, depending on how scarce DR and how important power play goals and power play assists are, Gostisbehere may or may not be someone you hold on to, but in some formats, just because he's on the top power play doesn't mean he's somebody that you want to stay connected to all year.
Yeah, I mean, if he's available, I would grab him now. Like if you need D, but yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be like a huge for sure, like big hit just because he's gotten these goals recently. Nick Foligno, I wanted to ask about Nick Foligno, Brian, because he's been on the top line and top power play on Chicago for a few games now. He's looking pretty good there. Like I'm looking at the numbers. He had goals in 2 straight, no points in yesterday's game against Buffalo, but 3 shots, 3 hits, 3 blocks. So Foligno gives you those peripherals, and then also is producing now that he's playing with Connor Bedard at even strength and on the power play. Less than 50% rostered in the Cupful. We have this awesome tool that Kevin has built where over our 51 Cupful divisions, you can go to Brian's favorite website, cupful.com, and see the percent rostered based on divisions. And I expected Foligno to have like shot up, but no, like he's still in free agency in over half of the divisions. Do you think this is just because like no one believes it's going to hold? Like no one wants to waste a move to add Foligno just for him to get bumped back down to the bottom 6? Or do you think like we're all kind of like sleepy, and whoever does end up jumping on him in all of these divisions is going to end up being really happy with the results?
I think you'll be happy if you add Nick Foligno. I think for one, you're right. It's like there's this uncertainty that Foligno stays in the lineup where he is. I think the other piece is that Chicago hasn't had a schedule moment for anyone to like be like, okay, I need a Chicago player. Oh, Nick Foligno. So I think we're used to glazing past his name too. But this is your reminder in this moment. Don't glaze past the name of Nick Foligno. I think he could be someone who's like, if you held on to Tyler Bertuzzi last season or Michael Bunting when they weren't doing that well, Foligno is doing about what we'd have wanted Bunting and Bertuzzi to be doing while we were waiting for them. So just because he's Nick Foligno, don't look through him.
Yeah, I think it's more like just be aware of how good Connor Bedard is. You want the guy on the top line and top power play with him. Like I think of it as like, remember Philip Kurashev, who was a nobody, then got all that time with Bedard, was really good last year, and now he's lost that time and he's back to being a nobody. So it's just like and Foligno's not even a nobody. He's like had a good career. So yeah, definitely someone to have your eye on. But maybe Brian's right, that not worth like grabbing to get like one game out of next week with that crazy schedule. So you have to make the decision for yourself how much of a risk you want to take, giving up a game in order to get a guy you're hoping holds that spot. One last hot streak, Brian, before we go to the cold streaks. Let's go to Buffalo. JJ Peterka was injured after also not having a great couple first games, but now he's great. Like he's at 4 goals in 3 games since returning, and only 38% rostered on Yahoo. I can't think of like any possible league. Like we've talked about a lot of guys. We've said like, pause the pod, go grab him. I think Peterka is like the most obvious for sure. Like he's also top line, top power play, just like Foligno, except he's obviously at a different part of his career. Peterka is like scoring goals. He's shooting. I wish I was in a league where he wasn't rostered. Like it sounds insane to me, but like 38% rostered in Yahoo, I feel like that's going to be like 80 within a month. That's my hunch. Curious to know if you concur there.
Sounds right. It's with all the buzz and hype around him. I mean, he was injured, but I assume most people just moved him into IR, and now that he's come back and done so well, JJ Peterka, I mean, if he keeps this up and he keeps his deployment, then he should be above 90% even.
Okay, and then I want to get into cold streaks, but I'll like let's just finish the Buffalo talk. So I'll do a couple cold streaks on Buffalo before moving to the cold streak segment. Not that anyone cares about my segments. It's all just in my head. So Rasmus Dahlin was discussed on the last short shifts episode. Only so short shifts episode. Really slow start to the season since they recorded that. Another 0 point game versus Chicago. He also had 0 shots. I mean, should we be like we had Dahlin pretty high in that charcuterie D? I think if you recall, Brian, or remind me if I'm right, we had Makar in the top tier. Then we had Josi, Bouchard, and Dahlin in the second tier. Dahlin is actually Bouchard's also doing badly. We'll get to him in the Oilers later. But like, are you worried about Rasmus Dahlin, or do you think like he's about to explode?
I can only hope that Darlene is about to explode. Like I had hoped for big things from Darlene this year, and I backed that up with getting some draft stocks. I'm not happy to see that he's down 90 seconds a night at 5-on-5. I'm a little relieved to see that his shot attempts are the same as usual. They're actually a little higher than they've been per 60 minutes, but not as many shots are getting to the net. I think that should even out, and that his points participation rate is also down. Like I think there's just some bad variance happening here for Dahlin. I think he's going to be okay. And like Bouchard, I think this is a buy low window that might be open for anyone who just doesn't have the
stomach,
the stomach for this, the stick to itiveness.
But that ice time thing does sound concerning when you say that. It's like that's not luck.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I don't know what to. I mean, think about it. Like Bo Byram has joined, Owen Power has joined, and like I just feel like maybe there's less need for Rasmus Dahlin to be the only capable puck mover. Now that there's some other options in the mix here, so maybe it's strategic, but yeah, for sure, I don't love seeing Dahlin lose ice time.
Yeah, I mean, last year Dahlin paced for 60 points. The year before 77. Like clearly, the way we placed him in Charcuterie D, we were thinking of him as like closer to that 70 to 80 point guy. So far, 2 points in 7 games. We might be getting to a point soon where kind of like we said about Pettersson, like maybe we got to think of more the lower end of the upside we were hoping for. Maybe we are looking at like a 60 to 70 point guy, especially if you're saying that this lower ice time is going to change. So we'll need more time. Sure, buy low, but yeah. I guess I'm a little bit more concerned with you just because of the lower ice time. He's still getting a lot of ice time though, so it'll probably be fine. He is Rasmus Dahlin. He's very good. All right, he is Rasmus Dahlin. After all, he is really good. Okay, edit point now, and then I'm gonna go into the cold streaks.
All right, let's lightning the cold. I know there's not very much left, but
okay, let's just, some of them are things people care about, but yeah, obviously
sure. But let's try and like a minute on each would be great.
Okay. All right, Brian, into the cold streaks now to finish off the show. And these are some like serious names here. And I'm just very curious to know. I feel for most of them, you're going to be like, don't worry about it. They'll be fine. But I am curious for some more Ehlers takes from you of guys who you think actually we should be very nervous about. We have to start with the Nashville Predators. How are they 0-5? It's insane. This is a team that just like looked like a contender, a cup contender after the moves they made in the offseason. Clearly, they need some time to work something out. Also, maybe UC Saros needs some time to figure his game out. He's locked in still for 9 more years, including this one. And there's no more Askarov. You know, it's all going to be Saros there. And he's had a really bad start in 4 games, an .875 save percentage, 3 goals against versus Detroit in the loss yesterday, 3 goals against also versus Edmonton, a big 6 goals against game versus Seattle. That's really brought down that save percentage. But yeah, I guess the question is just like, how nervous do we have to be about Nashville overall? Because that really affects Saros, who was one of the top goalies drafted. He's going to continue getting the volume. If I recall, he was like bad like this to start last season, so maybe that's like something to be comforting. Like he usually figures it out. But yeah, he's been bad. And then I'll throw some more names at you. Steven Stamkos finally scored versus Detroit, so that brings him up to 1 goal in 5 games, no assists. Obviously not the start people who drafted Stamkos were hoping for. And then I will say maybe on the other level, someone who's not super high end, but Brady Shea, I thought he would be decent, but he's done nothing. So I just dropped him in cupful for what it's worth. But I guess the more interesting ones are the Saros and the Stamkos and just like the team overall. Like, do you think that this can turn around?
We kind of saw this coming in Nashville, right? Like not I'm not going to say like, oh, we're brilliant. We knew this would like everyone was going to be terrible to start the year, but like we knew there were going to be adjustments. There's been like a huge makeover to the Nashville roster, forward and defense. So things are different. Like I'm looking at Saros' expected save percentage numbers. They're actually pretty consistent with the past couple seasons. Doesn't mean that things haven't changed around him though, and that everyone's learning how everyone operates. Saros has only played 4 times. I'm not going to panic. You're right. He started slow last year, too. So that's another piece of this. And same thing with Stamkos and Shea. They're coming to new teams. I'm going to give them, like, honestly, it could take up to a quarter of a season. And that's something I think you were signing up to when you were drafting them to say, to know that this was going to take some time. Adjustments were going to be needed in all likelihood, and hopefully after the first quarter everyone finds their place and is able to get on board and be their most productive selves.
Yeah, I like that, and I think I'm with you. I think now is a good time to trade for a Saros or a Stamkos if you can, but it's like don't expect immediate returns. But I'm with you that probably like once we're like halfway into the season, they should be rolling somewhat, and you should feel pretty decent depending on obviously what you gave up. Next up, I don't really know if we need to talk about, like we talked about the Oilers last week. They've continued to not do much. They've been like a little better, like, you know, Draisaitl and McDavid are starting to get like a point each per game, which is nice. But yeah, so many disappointing Oilers. Like pour one out to anyone who drafted Hyman, Bouchard, Ryan Nugent Hopkins. We've discussed Stuart Skinner. These are like super high end picks that are just not paying off at all. Any updates from last week, or is it just like they're the Oilers? Like you got it's too early for me to think that they've like they don't have it anymore.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna like here. There's no adjustment period. Maybe like they're tired still, from although it hasn't been an issue for Florida, so it's hard to really give them that out. Look, all I'll tell you is that you've brought up the Nashville Predators, who rank 32nd in the league in 5-on-5 save percentage. They're shooting just over 4%. And the Edmonton Oilers are the 31st ranked team in 5-on-5 shooting percentage. They are shooting just under 5%. We should expect teams to be able to shoot like 9 to 10%. And they're way off those numbers. So I'm not panicking about either one of these. This is a run of bad luck to start the year. And if you're a fantasy hockey manager, it's an opportunity to maybe find somebody who is really, really impatient and grab somebody from one of these teams with super low shooting percentages.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like I'm going to scrape by and win my second couple matchups. I'm going to be 2-0. So I have Draisaitl, so maybe I should just feel good that, like, hey, I'm winning even with Draisaitl slumping. Think of how good things will go once he's a superstar. I hope. Taylor is saying in the chat, even Arvidsson, I'm close to dropping. I mean, once you're getting to the guys not on the top power play, that gets obviously a little bit more concerning. But also Shams is saying that the Oilers have been, so you, Brian, were talking about even strength and saying how they should bounce back there. They've apparently also been bad on the power play. You've got to imagine that's going to bounce back as well. So obviously there's a little bit of just hopefulness. But
at 5-on-5, there's reason to hope. Like the Oilers rank 5th in the league in expected goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. For Nashville, the story is actually pretty bad. Like they rank 31st in the league in expected goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, just only ahead of Columbus. So if I'm expecting one team to break out of their shooting percentage funk in a more spectacular way, it's going to be Edmonton, while Nashville still continues to try and figure things out. I'm trying to see how terrible the Edmonton Shams. I'm curious what you mean. Shams is in the chat for anyone listening about Edmonton's power play being terrible. Like, have they been particularly bad at generating chances or converting?
Well, what's their power play percentage so far?
Yeah, great question. I mean,
that's the standard thing I think people look at. Yeah, for power plays.
Yeah. Do you think I can find it?
I thought that was like a standard thing that's like listed everywhere.
Yeah, I can find it. I really just needed a sec. Power play percentage for the Edmonton Oilers. They're converting on, they've converted 1 of 15 opportunities. They have a single power play goal. And they're getting fewer than 3 they're getting 2.5 power play opportunities a night. I'm just seeing like where that fits. That's low. They should probably be trying to draw a few more penalties, as Connor McDavid always does, as Edmonton Oilers fans are screaming at their phones, this is a penalty. So, yeah, Edmonton should probably get a few more opportunities, and they will no doubt convert on more of those opportunities.
All right, it's going to be great for us. All of us people who have Oilers, just let's wait a little longer. We're going to be okay. Brian promises. In the same vein as Dahlin and Bouchard, Miro Heiskanen is still pointless. Another pointless game. They talked about him on short shifts. Jeremy said that he thinks Thomas Harley could eventually bump Heiskanen from the top power play. He gave reasons for that. Definitely go check out that show. It was dropped just a couple days ago. Really great job from Shams and Jeremy. But yeah, we had a question from Ouch over on our Discord. Also asking about Mason Marchment. I guess he's like one of the bright spots on Dallas because Marchment's been good. He's wondering if he's a hold. But I guess we'll get to that in a sec. But Miro Heiskanen and Brian, is he just another guy you're going to say, like, don't worry about it? Or are we? I'm still waiting for my spicy, like, actually, no, you should actually be really worried about this person.
Yeah, no, I don't have that. I don't have that one. I don't think there's enough games yet to go all the way there. Like, I think that's like that might be a next week thing with Heiskanen. He hasn't picked up a point at 5-on-5 yet. He's never been a big shooter. He's shooting even a little less. That's not great. His line's doing well while he's on the ice. He just hasn't gotten a point. Like, they're shooting. It's actually kind of funny. Like, the Stars are shooting 13% with Heiskanen on the ice, and yet he can't get in on any of that action. So, hey, that's a bummer. I assume he will, just by regression, be getting a couple more points than he has so far. But it is he's got someone in Thomas Harley, right? Who's right. We sense that he's right there. I don't know that he's right there. But it just does add that extra seed of doubt when Heiskanen's struggling. But I'm not going to sound the alarm yet.
Okay, I mean, I'll bet you if you had him, you'd be a little more nervous. Pointless is like
I'm
rough.
I'm nervous. I'm not saying I'm not worried, but I am
saying like we want to give it some more time.
Yeah, I think it's just a weird 6 games.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Mason Marchment, by the way, 6 points in 6 games. I've never really fully bought in on Mason Marchment. Are you thinking like he's a guy you're holding if you have him, even if with a bad schedule?
No, I don't think the deployment is there to hold him, and like I don't know. Like I'm not sure how much of a believer I can be. Like, Mason Marchment is 29 years old now. He had that one great year with Florida where he had 47 points in 54 games. And since then, he still takes a couple shots a night, but I mean, doesn't see substantially great minutes or opportunities. So I'm still going to say like he's good for a couple hits. He's good for a couple shots and an occasional point. But he's not someone that I think is like so unique that you really need to stick with.
Okay, fair enough. All right, next cold streak. This is a guy on my cupful roster, Brian. So I need you to spend an extra bit of time. No, I'm just kidding. Wait, sorry. Let me say it again. All right, next cold streak, Brian. This is a guy I have on my cupful roster, so I need you to give me a lot of hope here that everything's going to be fine. Owen Tippett. The thing is, I know you were kind of like never super excited about Owen Tippett, but I'm hoping that you'll still tell me now that things will be better. Still no goals, even though he has 18 shots in his last... Wait, that can't be right. 18 shots in his last 3 games? Why did I write that? Sorry, everybody. Why did I write that? Maybe it's 18 shots overall? 17 shots in 5 games. Okay, whatever. Okay, I got the stats now. All right, next cold streak, Brian. This is a guy I have on my cupful roster, so I'm really hoping you're going to give me some good news here. Owen Tippett has only 1 assist in 5 games so far, no goals. He has taken 17 shots, but yeah, nothing's gone in. I really hope that he's going to start going off. There's a reason I drafted him was because he's a big shooter, but also because he scores some goals. It seems like he's still getting decent deployment on Philly. They're changing the lines around a lot, but it's usually with Tippett on a top line with Mitch Gover, with Konechny or something like that. What do you think? Hopefully this isn't like Barrett Hayton from last year, where he also took a ton of shots, never scored, and then eventually just fell off completely.
Oh, you're still so scarred from that. And yeah, I see, like, they were, right? Big shooter. I see you going back there. Great deployment. I mean, I can't promise Tippett's going to be different than Hayton, but like I'm pretty sure he's got like, here's a very basic way to say, like, look, he has no actual goals so far, Owen Tippett, but he has 2 expected goals, low points participation, low on ice shooting percentage. To me, this is a great buy low moment. So I would be actually actively going out and seeking Owen Tippett, like Ehlers for Tippett. How about that? That's what I would
Okay.
do. Absolutely, in a heartbeat.
All right, that's a good advice to the Ehlers managers. I think that's a trade that you could probably pull off. So let us know if anyone takes that plunge. We had a question from Trev about Elias Lindholm. This is a weird one, right? Because I feel like just a week ago, were we talking about Elias Lindholm having a great start to the year? I guess things could change quickly when we have these short sample sizes. But yeah, Lindholm started the season with points in his first 3 games, was up to 5 points in 3 games, and now yeah, pointless in 3 games and only 0 or 1 shots. So it's been a really rough week for anyone holding Elias Lindholm. Trev was asking if maybe this is just the kind of thing where David Pasternak is a little cold. He only has like 1 goal and no assists in the past 3 games. So it's like if Pasternak's cold, then obviously Lindholm's going to be cold, and we assume Pasternak will get better. Ergo, don't worry about Lindholm. Is that where you're at, or is it like, this is kind of like concerning?
I think that's where I'm at with Lindholm. Pasternak, like, has a lot of goals. He doesn't have very many assists. And I think part of that might be because Elias Lindholm needs to, like, it would be helpful if Lindholm did a couple things. First, if he shot more, and then he scored more. Lindholm has actually scored on half the shots he's taken at 5-on-5, but like he has barely taken any shots at all. 6 shots through 6 games total for Elias Lindholm. And we'd like to see him like his best season to date. He had 3 shots per night. Outside of that, he's generally been at least 2.5 shots per game. So it's a strange start to his Boston career to not shoot. I guess when you play with David Pasternak, then maybe part of the point is you're just supposed to get him the puck. But it would be really, really encouraging. Like I'm worried. I'm worried about Elias Lindholm. He had a rough year last year. He went to Vancouver. Remember, like he just tumbled down the depth chart there too. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe he's just not like that incredible.
he might just not be that good. And like, which was the case before he got to Calgary, right? Remember in Carolina, he was like a 40 or 50 point player who we thought had the skill, but didn't have what he needed there to break out. Maybe he doesn't have it in Boston either. I think that's at least
Mm.
something worth keeping in the back of our minds.
Yeah, Patty's saying, by the way, Pasternak's not cold. He's on a team with no depth, which is like bad news either way. Either way, that's bad news if you have Pasternak. I'd imagine he'll figure it out, but maybe part of figuring that out will be playing with someone else. I don't know. So okay, too early to tell, but okay. Brian is saying that he's concerned. There's the answer to that, Trev. He'll put that down in accountability, and hopefully we'll look smart in a month. Last name I'll bring up, Brian Anthony Duclair was a little cold. He was pointless in 2 games. Now he's hurt. I don't think we've gotten any news updates today on if it's serious. Yeah, there was no update after the game. Elliot Friedman said he needed help off the ice after twisting awkwardly the third period of that game versus the Canadians. So we'll find out if that's serious. If it is serious, I'm just curious. Do we have any guesses? Like, who's taking his spot? Like, Duclair's been on that sweet spot on the top line and top power play with Barzal and Horvat. I don't even know. I think like Anders Lee might be someone we need to start considering again. Like, I think the second line of Nelson, Palmieri, and Siplikov has been solid. My guess, if I'm throwing it out there, is going to be Anders Lee, and then maybe like Palmieri jumps to the top power play. That's my guess. So if either of
Yeah.
those names interest you, but Brian might have a different guess, or like maybe there's no point guessing, and we'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I truly couldn't tell you. By the time we're listening, like gamedaytweets.com will probably have the answer. So I don't think we need to speculate in this moment. I will say, though, quietly, Kyle Palmieri has 2 goals and assists and 3 points and 17 shots so far this season. And he did step on to the top power play in the game Duclair was injured. So he's already maybe there on the power play, and we'll see what happens at 5-on-5.
Interesting. I'm seeing like some weird power play. Oh yeah, I see that. Okay, right. They were having Horvat, Duclair, Barzal, and Maxim Siplikov, my guy who I added in my dynasty last year mid-season, and he's come in, has 3 points in 5 games, and has been getting top power play. So if he's still out there, he's good. But he's more just someone I'm excited about just because I got him for so cheap. But yeah, maybe if Siplikov is out there in free agency, then maybe you're not jumping for an Anders Lee at this point, just because he might get on the top line. But I think Palmieri, yeah, if he jumps on the top power, but that makes him pretty valuable because he still has some juice. It seems taking a lot of shots. I always like to see that. I always like to see Brian another episode. Or no, I always like to see that. But yeah, Brian, one thing I don't always like to see is our shows coming to the end, but it does have to happen, and it's been such a blast. I hope that people really liked this one. It's really just exciting just to have NHL action. I love being able to dive into things that are actually happening after a big, long season of so much speculation. I feel like it's just such a breath of fresh air. Maybe also I'm feeling this way because I'm going to be 2-0 in Cupful, which is a nice feeling, and maybe that's also clouding a lot of my judgment. Or I guess clouding judgment means it's bad. I don't know, in the positive way, right? It's a nice cloud, rainbowing my judgment. I'm making up a phrase there. But yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you've been enjoying all that we've been throwing on our feed. Like Brian mentioned, we had a couple of really fun short shifts episodes last week with Jeremy and Shams and with Elizabeth and Lewis. Hopefully you like my matchup maximizer. I try my best to make the most of a week schedule and not too many options. Yeah, if you want to make sure you get all of these shows, make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson. We really appreciate getting those downloads, helping our numbers look good to our new podcast network. Also, of course, if you wanted to leave us a review, 5 stars, of course, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, we'd really, that helps us a lot. It doesn't cost you anything, right? And if you do have a little spare change you want to throw at us, we do have our Patreon going, and I think it's going pretty strong. I think it's a pretty good deal. $5 American gets you access to our community where we are having a lot of fun on the Discord, discussing everything going on in the NHL, giving each other advice. There's a bunch of other perks. You can check out all the info over at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But with that, Brian, I will stop my blabbing. Could we make that like a trademark of the show, or like should I just say stop my blabbing at the end of every episode? I feel like I say it sometimes, but usually it's just because I can't think of anything else to say. My brain is fried at this point. But I'm gonna stop blabbing now for real. Throw to you. Cue the outro music. Read us the credits.
Okay. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Patty, Ricard, David, Ryan, Tom, Zach, Andrea, Sammy, Philip, Aaron, Patrick, Brian, Michael, Roman, Top Cheese, Paul, and Richard. Thank you to Kevin Aber and J Brew for doing all they're doing to keep the Cupful running smoothly. kkupfl.com for more info. You can join the wait list, and we're going to need replacement managers at some point, and probably at some point not in the so distant future. So we'd love to have you on board and ready to take over a team and make lemons out of lemonade. Or maybe you take over a great team already. Who knows? kkupfl.com for that. Thank you, Elon and Shams, for keeping the fantasy news coming at GameDayTweets.com. Shout out to our Short Shifts crew, who you'll listen to throughout the week. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Yahoo, and not Cap Friendly, I meant Puckpedia.
Yeah, Puckpedia is great. Good for them taking over. I've really enjoyed them as much as I miss Cap Friendly. Great job as always, Brian. Once again, thanks everyone for listening. Stay tuned for short shifts coming in a couple of days where Lewis will be joined by Ryan, a longtime friend of the podcast. You've heard him before on Fantasy Hockey Life. Now you'll hear him on short shifts. And then Brian and I will be back at you with another mega episode next weekend. Any advice, Brian, to people as they go into their week 3 matchups on how they can make the most of their fantasy experience?
Yeah, just keep doing all you can to make sure that in your fantasy hockey leagues, everyone feels good. And another way of saying that would be do what you can to make sure fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Sweet. We did it.
Bam.
And this is actually a pretty reasonable length show. Like, if once we take out all the delays from me having to help my baby, I'll bet you it's only an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Look at us.
We have but now all I need is a normal sleeping baby. We'll be out of here by 9:45 some nights.
It's going to be crazy.
We'll see. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for the kind words.
Thanks for the chat.
See y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.